History is filled with civilizations that rose to greatness, building vast cities, mastering knowledge, and leaving behind breathtaking monuments. Yet some of them disappeared without leaving any clear explanation. Were they destroyed by natural disasters, consumed by war, devastated by disease, or lost to reasons still hidden in mystery? Their silence continues to puzzle both historians and scientists today. Deep within the steaming jungles of Central America, where vines coil around ancient stones and howler monkeys echo through forgotten plazas, lie the ruins of a civilization, once as dazzling as it was enigmatic. The Maya, masters of the stars, architects of colossal pyramids, creators of a written language unlike any other in the Americas, rose to astonishing heights of science, art, and spirituality. Their calendars could predict eclipses, their cities rivaled the greatest in the ancient world, and their rituals bound heaven and earth together in ways still hauntingly mysterious. And yet, in one of history's most haunting enigmas, this brilliant civilization suddenly faltered and collapsed. By the 9th century, many of their thriving cities were abandoned, swallowed by the relentless jungle. Why did the Maya, who seemed to hold the keys to the cosmos, vanish from their stone metropolises almost overnight? This enduring mystery continues to challenge scholars, ignite debate, and captivate the imagination of all who walk among the silent ruins today. So what do you think truly caused the mysterious collapse of the Maya civilization? Drought, warfare, social crisis, or perhaps another reason we haven't even imagined yet? Share your thoughts in the comments below. The Maya are renowned for their monumental constructions. Amid tropical rainforests that seemed impenetrable, they created vast stone cities such as Tikal Palenque Copan and Chichen Itza. Towering step pyramids, wide plazas, and palaces richly decorated with reliefs and sculptures reveal an impressive mastery of architecture, despite the Maya lacking iron tools or beasts of burden. These structures were not only places of religion and ritual, but also symbols of royal power. Each city was a political, cultural, and spiritual hub, hosting frequent ceremonies dedicated to the gods. To this day, many Maya cities remain buried beneath the jungle, still awaiting excavation, shrouded in mystery, as silent witnesses of a once brilliant civilization. One of the most remarkable features of the Maya was their ability to observe the heavens. They developed several calendars, including Solkin, 260 days, for religious rituals, Hab, 365 days for everyday life, and especially the long count to calculate cycles spanning thousands of years. The accuracy of the Maya calendar astonishes even modern scholars. They could predict solar and lunar eclipses, the cycles of Venus, the moon, and other celestial bodies. Some temples and pyramids were aligned so precisely that sunlight on certain special days, like equinoxes or solstices, would pass directly through doorways or create striking light and shadow effects on their stone walls. The famous Serpent of Light descending the steps of Kukulkan's pyramid at Chichen Itza is a celebrated example. The Maya created the most complex and complete writing system in ancient America. Their script combined logograms, symbolic images, with syllabic signs. Over 800 glyphs have been discovered on stelae, temple walls, ceramics, and particularly in codices, folding books made from bark paper containing records of calendars, medicine, astrology, and rituals. Although many manuscripts were destroyed during the Spanish conquest, a few codices, such as the Dresden Codex, survived and remain invaluable sources for modern scholars studying Maya thought and knowledge. The Maya were among the few ancient civilizations to use the concept of zero-something, absent even in Greek or Roman systems. Their vigesimal base 20 number system used dots, 1 bars, 5, and a shell-shaped symbol. Thanks to zero, Their astronomical and calendrical calculations reached remarkable precision. This ability enabled the Maya to plan monumental architecture without modern tools and to sustain a calendar system far more advanced than many contemporary cultures. To the Maya, the universe was a fragile balance between humans and gods. They believed the gods required nourishment through blood and sacrifice to preserve cosmic order. Human sacrifice, though grim to modern eyes, was central to their religion. They also had a sacred ball game known as Pok-ta-Pok, played with a heavy rubber ball on courts flanked by high walls. Players could only use hips, elbows, or knees to strike the ball through stone rings. This was not mere sport, it carried religious significance, and in some cases, the losers were sacrificed to honor the gods. One of the greatest enigmas in human history is the collapse of the Maya civilization, a question that even today has no definitive answer. Around the 9th century, the most prosperous Maya cities in the southern lowlands, once powerful centers of politics, religion, and economy, were suddenly abandoned. Pyramids that once echoed with sacred rituals, plazas once crowded with citizens, palaces once resplendent with royal authority, all fell silent, gradually swallowed by the jungle. What astonishes us is that the Maya did not completely disappear. Their descendants still live across Central America today, yet the radiant urban civilization that symbolized their greatness disintegrated in a way that defies easy explanation. Researchers have proposed many different theories. Some point to climate change, particularly decades-long droughts that devastated agriculture. As water and harvests dwindled, famine and disease spread, pushing society into crisis. Others emphasize the role of warfare. Maya city-states were often locked in cycles of conflict, alliance, and betrayal, waging endless wars that drained resources and fractured centralized authority. In addition, overexploitation of resources, such as deforestation for construction timber and farmland, led to environmental decline, soil exhaustion, and the inability to feed a growing population. Another hypothesis highlights social-religious crisis, when disasters, wars, and famine struck, the people lost faith in their rulers and in religious rituals once believed to maintain cosmic balance, triggering the collapse of political and social order. Yet no single theory fully explains this event. Many scholars believe the Maya collapse was the outcome of multiple overlapping factors, a perfect storm where climate change, environmental degradation, ceaseless warfare, and social upheaval all converged, driving a once brilliant civilization to ruin. This complexity has made the Maya one of the most mysterious and captivating cases in archaeology. How could a society with precise astronomical calendars, monumental architecture, and a powerful belief system fail to withstand crisis? Could there have been other influences we have yet to uncover, perhaps even external forces? These questions continue to resonate, urging scholars onward and captivating the imagination of all who stand before the silent ruins hidden deep in the Central American jungle. Although the ancient civilization collapsed, the Maya people still live on. In Mexico, Guatemala, Belize, Honduras, and El Salvador, their descendants preserve many traditions, languages, clothing styles, and beliefs. Maya culture today is both ancient and modern, proving that while their empire fell, their identity never disappeared. The Maya stand as vivid testimony to both the greatness and fragility of human civilizations. They reached extraordinary heights in architecture, mathematics, writing, astronomy, and art, yet they could not avoid decline. Their mysterious collapse has become a timeless warning. Could even modern civilizations, with all their achievements, one day face a similar fate? When speaking of the great civilizations of the Americas before the time of Columbus, Most people immediately think of the Maya, with their calendars accurate to the day, or the Aztecs with their majestic pyramids in Tenochtitlan. Yet few know that before both of these civilizations arose, there was already a mother civilization, a society that planted the very first seeds of culture, religion, and science throughout Central America. This was the Olmec, who lived mainly along the Gulf Coast of Mexico, in what is now the states of Veracruz and Tabasco. The Olmec thrived from around 1500 BCE to 400 BCE, nearly 2,000 years before the Maya reached their peak. They are considered the first civilization with a complex social structure in Central America and the originators of many traits later seen across Mesoamerica. Ritual centers such as San Lorenzo La Venta and Tres Zapotes stand as proof of a society with leadership, advanced religion, and distinctive art. But what made the Olmec remarkable was not only that they were the first, but also the mysterious legacies they left behind, from their colossal stone heads to their unexplained disappearance. What do you think truly caused the mysterious disappearance of the Olmec? Climate change, natural disasters, warfare, or perhaps another reason that history has yet to record? Share your thoughts in the comments below. The most iconic symbols of the Olmec civilization are the colossal basalt stone heads. Each one stands 2 to 3 meters high, weighs 20-40 tons, and portrays faces wearing helmets or ceremonial headgear. Researchers believe these were portraits of rulers or powerful warriors. The most astonishing part lies in their transport. The basalt blocks came from mountains tens or even hundreds of kilometers away, then somehow were moved to the lowlands, a nearly impossible feat given the technology of the time. These sculptures were more than art. They were a message. The Olmecs sought to immortalize their leaders, proclaim their social power, and reinforce their bond with the divine. Even today, how they transported and carved such massive stones remains one of archaeology's enduring mysteries. Though they left few complete texts, archaeological evidence shows that the Olmec developed an early writing system, possibly one of the first hieroglyphic forms in the Americas. Researchers also discovered the Olmec calendar, believed to be the precursor of the 260-day calendar, later perfected by the Maya. In religion, the Olmec worshipped natural deities, the maize god, vital to survival, the rain god tied to harvests, the feathered serpent, later adopted by Maya and Aztec, and above all, the jaguar. The recurring image of the were-jaguar human-jaguar hybrid in Olmec art symbolized supernatural power and the merging of humans with the spirit world. The Olmec are also thought to have invented the rubber ball game, a ritual sport played for thousands of years across Mesoamerica. Far more than recreation, it was tied to sacred rites and sacrifice. In this way, the Olmec laid down a cultural foundation that spread throughout the region. San Lorenzo was one of the earliest Olmec cities, planned with raised platforms, ceremonial plazas, and a stone drainage system. Later, La Venta became their largest center, home to an earthen pyramid over 30 meters tall, one of the largest structures of its time. Tres Zapotes stood out for its carved stelae with glyphs and numbers, evidence of their complex counting system. Notably, Olmec architecture was not primarily residential, but religious. This reveals that religion was the central pillar of Olmec life, underpinning both social order and authority. Around 400 BCE, something extraordinary occurred. The Olmec civilization, once flourishing with vast ceremonial centers, refined art, and influence stretching across Mesoamerica, suddenly declined. Cities such as San Lorenzo and La Venta, once strongholds of power and religion, were gradually abandoned. Populations dispersed, ritual complexes fell silent, and the traces of a once prosperous society lingered only in stone remnants and ruins swallowed by the jungle. This disappearance left behind no written records, no signs of large-scale warfare, and no definitive evidence explaining why such a pioneering civilization collapsed. That mystery has turned the Olmec into one of the greatest enigmas in human history. Modern theories propose several possible scenarios. One of the most frequently mentioned is climate change. The Gulf Coast of Mexico, where the Olmec lived, was prone to flooding from major rivers and could also endure harsh droughts. If natural conditions shifted abruptly, for instance, years of heavy rains causing destructive floods or prolonged droughts ruining crops, agriculture dependent on maize would have collapsed. With food supplies dwindling, society would inevitably fall into crisis, forcing populations to migrate elsewhere in search of survival. Another hypothesis points to more catastrophic natural events, such as volcanic eruptions or earthquakes. Central America lies within a geologically unstable region, and a single devastating event could have destroyed ritual centers, homes, and irrigation systems. Once the environment became unsustainable, the Olmec would have had no choice but to abandon their once great cities. Beyond natural causes, some scholars suggest the possibility of internal conflict and external pressure. A complex society like the Olmec surely had hierarchical divisions of power. If tensions grew between rulers, the religious elite and common people's social order could have unraveled. At the same time, neighboring groups rising in strength might have challenged Olmec dominance, gradually eroding their influence and forcing them into decline. Perhaps the most remarkable aspect is this: even though the Olmec disappeared as a political and social entity, their culture lived on. The essential elements they created, from the rubber ball game, the feathered serpent deity, and the maize god, to the 260-day calendar, were adopted and gloriously developed by later civilizations such as the Maya and the Aztec. It is as if the Olmec fulfilled their mission as cultural pioneers, then quietly passed their spiritual legacy to future generations before vanishing from history's stage. It is this vanishing without a clear cause that gives the Olmec such an enduring allure. It has driven archaeologists to endlessly question, spurred decades of debate among scholars, and captivated the public with its mystery. Perhaps what makes the Olmec truly special is not only what they left behind, but also the enigmatic void they created, a once mighty civilization that suddenly burned out, leaving behind unanswered questions for more than 2 millennia. Today, the colossal stone heads still stand, defying time, as monuments to a society once great, yet gone without explanation. This very mystery has turned the Olmec into a subject of endless fascination for archaeologists, historians, and lovers of the unknown. The Olmec were trailblazers, pioneers of writing, religion, sculpture, and cosmic thought. But their greatest intrigue lies not in what they built, but in the unanswered question: why did such a pioneering civilization vanish almost without a trace? The Olmec were the mother civilization of Central America, laying the foundation for later developments by the Maya, Aztec, and other peoples. They left behind monumental works, a distinctive belief system, and cultural imprints that could not be erased. Yet their mysterious disappearance, with no clear records, no obvious wars, no definitive cause, has made them one of history's most compelling enigmas. Perhaps it is precisely this mystery that makes the Olmec so unique, a brilliant civilization that flared brightly, then vanished, leaving behind questions that remain unanswered even after thousands of years. High above the desert canyons of the American Southwest, hidden in sheer rock walls, lie the silent remains of a people who once thrived against impossible odds. They carved entire cities into cliffs, mastered farming in a land where rain was scarce, and built communities that endured for centuries. and then without warning, they vanished. No chronicles explain their fate. No battles left their mark. Only empty stone dwellings remain staring out across the mesas, like hollow eyes. These were the Anasazi ancestors of today's Pueblo peoples, and their disappearance stands as one of the most haunting mysteries in North American history. If a civilization could adapt and survive for centuries in such harsh conditions, why did they suddenly disappear? What do you think truly caused the Anasazi to abandon their cliff cities? Share your thoughts and theories in the comments below. One of the most impressive aspects of the Anasazi was their ability to construct monumental cliff dwellings, something few other cultures in the world ever achieved on such a grand scale. The remaining sites, such as Mesa Verde, Chaco Canyon, and Cliff Palace, stand as vivid evidence of their meticulous organization and extraordinary architectural skills. The most notable of these is Cliff Palace, the largest complex, with more than 150 living rooms and 23 kivas, circular ceremonial chambers, carefully built into a natural alcove. The strategic placement not only provided protection from scorching sun and violent storms, but also offered significant defensive advantages. Technically, they used sandstone mud mortar and wooden beams to build multi-story walls. Even without metal or modern tools, the stones were tightly fitted and have remained solid for centuries. Moreover, these constructions were not simply dwellings, but also carried deep social and religious symbolism, reflecting strong communal bonds. Seen from afar, these hanging cities on the cliffs evoke a sense of mystery, as if they were created to serve as a bridge between humans and the divine. The Anasazi lived in a semi-arid desert region where rainfall was scarce and the soil was poor, yet they developed ingenious farming methods to survive. They dug canals to channel water from streams, built reservoirs, and created deep planting pits to retain precious moisture for their crops. Their three staple plants, corn, beans, and squash, formed the foundation of their diet, while they also cultivated cotton, hunted, and gathered wild foods to supplement their needs. Thanks to these techniques, the Anasazi were able to sustain communities numbering in the tens of thousands for centuries, despite the harsh climate. This demonstrates that they were not only brilliant builders, but also true masters of adaptation and survival in an unforgiving environment. The art of the Anasazi reflects both refinement and profound spirituality within their communal life. Their pottery was especially renowned for its black-on-white designs adorned with meticulous geometric patterns on jars, bowls, and vessels, serving not only aesthetic purposes but also carrying religious and cosmological meaning. In addition, turquoise was crafted into necklaces, amulets, or inlaid into objects symbolizing spiritual strength and a connection to the cosmos. Furthermore, rock carvings and cliff paintings depicting animals, people, and rituals reveal a doorway into their spiritual world, while also expressing the deep bond between the Anasazi and the surrounding natural environment. The Anasazi did not live in isolation, but were part of a vast trade network that extended as far as Mesoamerica. Archaeological evidence shows that their sites contained tropical bird feathers, Pacific seashells, cacao, and obsidian items originating from very distant regions. In return, Anasazi turquoise was widely traded and became a highly prized commodity in many other areas. This activity demonstrates that they were an important link in the flow of interregional economy and culture, with an influence that stretched far beyond their homeland. The Anasazi organized their social life around large, tightly knit communities in which the kiva's circular ceremonial chambers, located at the heart of each settlement, played a central role. These were not only places for religious rituals where they prayed for harvests and favorable rains, but also served as spaces for meetings and communal decision-making. Their spiritual beliefs were deeply tied to the sun, rain, earth, and crops, reflecting their dependence on nature. This social and religious system fostered strong communal unity, enabling them to endure and thrive for many centuries. The disappearance of the Anasazi is one of the most haunting historical mysteries in North America, puzzling generations of scholars and archaeologists alike. Around the 12th–13th centuries, massive cliff settlements such as Mesa Verde and Chaco Canyon, once vibrant centers of political, religious, and economic life, were suddenly abandoned almost all at once. There are no signs of major wars, nor evidence of a devastating epidemic, and yet a society that had flourished with tens of thousands of inhabitants, monumental architecture, and an extensive trade network vanished within just a few short centuries. Theories attempting to explain this phenomenon are diverse. The most prominent evidence comes from tree rings and sediment records, which reveal that between 1276 and 1299, there was a prolonged and severe drought. In an already water-scarce environment, such a disaster may have caused the fragile agricultural system to collapse, forcing mass migrations. In addition, continuous farming on arid land could have led to environmental degradation and resource exhaustion, while population growth placed unbearable pressure on the ecosystem. Some archaeological sites even reveal traces of violence and conflict, suggesting possible struggles over water and food between communities in times of crisis. Moreover, many scholars argue that instead of disappearing entirely, a portion of the Anasazi migrated and assimilated into modern Pueblo groups such as the Hopi-Zuni-Acoma or Taos, carrying their traditions and spiritual beliefs into a new cultural form. Even so, no single theory provides a complete answer. Why could a civilization that had adapted and endured for centuries not survive this final test? Why did they collectively abandon the hanging cities their ancestors had so painstakingly built, leaving them to decay in the cliffs? This mystery is like a symphony, abruptly cut short, leaving behind wonder, sorrow, and endless curiosity for posterity. It also serves as a powerful reminder that every civilization, no matter how innovative or resilient, can be fragile in the face of climate change, environmental decline, and social conflict. The disappearance of the Anasazi transformed them into a symbol not only of a vanished past, but also of the unanswered questions about the relationship between humanity, nature, and the destiny of civilizations. The Anasazi Pueblo are regarded as one of the most unique civilizations in North America, leaving an indelible mark in many aspects. They built magnificent hanging cities on sheer cliffs, developed sustainable agriculture in the midst of arid deserts, and created exquisite pottery along with turquoise jewelry, rich in symbolism. They also took part in long-distance trade networks and maintained a complex social-religious system that reflected remarkable communal organization. Yet above all, it is their sudden and mysterious disappearance that continues to fascinate posterity. Their story serves as a reminder of the fragility of civilizations in the face of natural and social upheavals, while at the same time sparking humanity's passion for exploration and urging us to keep searching for answers to mysteries that remain unsolved. Imagine a civilization so advanced that it built palaces resembling labyrinths, painted frescoes bursting with life and color, and ruled the Mediterranean seas with unmatched power. Yet today, most of what we know about them comes from ruins, undeciphered scripts, and fragments of myth. This was the world of the Minoans, the very first great civilization of Europe. From around 3000 to 1450 BCE, they flourished on the island of Crete, leaving behind wonders that still astonish us. And then, without warning, they disappeared. Their sudden collapse remains one of the greatest unsolved mysteries in human history, a riddle that continues to haunt archaeologists and storytellers alike. What do you think truly caused the mysterious collapse of the Minoans? Was it a natural disaster, an invasion, or something we still haven't uncovered? Share your thoughts in the comments below. The Minoans were far from a minor civilization. They built enormous palaces, the most famous being Knossos, a complex with hundreds of rooms, staircases, corridors, and courtyards so intricate that later Greeks created the myth of the Labyrinth of the Minotaur. In that myth, King Minos was said to have imprisoned a half-man, half-bull monster within an endless maze. In reality, the architecture of Knossos and other palaces like Phaistos Malia and Zakros revealed a level of construction and urban planning far superior to many civilizations of the same era. Particularly remarkable was their system of underground plumbing drainage and even early flushing toilets, innovations that Europe would not see again for millennia. Minoan art was also a special treasure. The frescoes at Knossos and other palaces displayed vibrant colors and dynamic movement, reflecting a rich spiritual life. One of the most striking images is that of young men and women performing the ritual of bull leaping, an activity both athletic and religious. The bull seems to have been central to Minoan worship and cultural symbolism. Horns of consecration appeared everywhere, emphasizing the link between humans and nature, between myth and daily life. From this sacred imagery, the myth of the Minotaur, half-man, half-bull, likely emerged as a symbol of mystery and supernatural power. Another remarkable feature of the Minoans was the role of women. Unlike many ancient civilizations, Minoan women held significant positions in both religion and society. They could serve as priestesses, participate in rituals, and were frequently depicted in art. Some scholars even argue that Minoan society leaned toward matriarchy, or at least showed women greater respect than did Egypt, Mesopotamia, or later classical Greece. What makes the Minoans especially mysterious is their language. They left behind a script known as Linear A, which to this day has not been deciphered. Unlike Linear B, a later script used by the Mycenaeans to write early Greek, Linear A remains completely beyond modern understanding. Since we cannot read their original texts, we know the Minoans only through their artifacts, paintings, and the accounts of other civilizations. This gap adds a large layer of mystery to Minoan history. During their peak, the Minoans were known as a powerful maritime trading empire. With their central position in the Mediterranean, they controlled vital sea routes, exchanging goods with Egypt, Mesopotamia, the Aegean Islands, and beyond. The ancient Greeks called them a thalassocracy, a sea empire. Minoan ships carried pottery, olive oil, wine, metals, and luxury goods far and wide, turning Crete into one of the most prosperous trade hubs of the ancient world. Even at the height of their glory, the Minoan civilization collapsed suddenly around the 15th century BCE, leaving history with one of its most perplexing questions. Why did such a wealthy, powerful, and advanced society vanish almost without a trace? For decades, scholars have proposed numerous theories. The most prominent points to the catastrophic eruption of the Santorini Thera volcano north of Crete around 1600 BCE. It is considered one of the greatest natural disasters in human history. The immense force of the eruption generated tsunamis tens of meters high that swept across Crete's coast, destroying settlements and ports. The volcanic ash spread through the atmosphere, likely altering the regional climate. The skies darkened, sunlight, diminished harvests, failed, and the economy, heavily dependent on agriculture and trade, fell into crisis. For a society so closely tied to the sea and farming, this shock could have destabilized the very foundation of their survival. Yet archaeology shows that the Minoans continued to exist for at least a century after the Santorini disaster. This leads to the second theory: invasion by the Mycenaeans from mainland Greece. Around 1450 BCE, most Minoan palaces were either destroyed or seized. Soon after, the script known as Linear B, used by the Mycenaeans, appeared on Crete, completely replacing Linear A, which has never been deciphered. These findings suggest that the Mycenaeans conquered the Minoans, absorbing them into the emerging Greek civilization. Perhaps after suffering severe damage from natural disasters, the Minoans lost their military strength and ability to resist, making them easy targets for northern aggressors. However, many researchers do not stop at a single cause. They argue that the Minoan collapse was the result of a chain of combined factors: devastating natural disasters, tsunamis, disease, famine, and military pressure from the Mycenaeans. This complex interplay may have driven a once powerful civilization to extinction in a relatively short time. Intriguingly, the sudden fall of the Minoans echoes the story of Atlantis as told by the philosopher Plato centuries later. Atlantis was described as a glorious empire that sank into the sea in a single day and night. The similarities have led many to wonder, could the Minoan catastrophe be the real historical inspiration for the legend of Atlantis? Although no definitive proof has been found, this theory continues to fuel human imagination, making the mystery of the Minoans both historical in substance and mythical in spirit. What is fascinating is that despite their disappearance, the Minoans did not vanish entirely from history. Their culture and traditions were absorbed by the Mycenaeans, then carried forward into classical Greece, the very foundation of Western civilization. Myths of the Minotaur, the labyrinth king Minos, and a cataclysmic fall into the sea became cornerstones of Greek mythology. Today, the ruins of Knossos, Phaistos, and Zakros still stand as witnesses of a civilization both brilliant and mysterious. Frescoes, pottery artifacts, and the undeciphered Linear A script continue to challenge modern scholarship. Yet above all, the unanswered question remains: what really happened to the Minoans? Perhaps it is this very mystery that makes the Minoans so captivating to us today. They stand as proof of humanity's extraordinary creativity in prehistory, but also as a reminder that even the greatest civilizations can collapse in the blink of an eye. Just like the shattered stones of Knossos, lying silent under the Mediterranean sun, the disappearance of the Minoans remains an unsolved riddle in the history of humankind. Deep in the jungles of Cambodia, colossal stone towers pierce through the canopy, their carved faces staring silently into eternity. Once this land was the heart of an empire so powerful that it ruled much of Southeast Asia, feeding a population of nearly 1 million with ingenious reservoirs and canals, and leaving behind temples that rival the pyramids of Egypt in scale and ambition. The Khmer Empire, crowned by the breathtaking Angkor Wat, was not just a kingdom, it was a world unto itself, blending art, religion, and engineering into a civilization that seemed unshakable. But then, as if swallowed by the very jungle it had conquered, Angkor fell. Its cities emptied, its mighty hydraulic systems crumbled, and its temples became ruins cloaked in silence. Why did a civilization of such brilliance vanish so suddenly? Was it war climate, or something even more elusive? The story of the Khmer is not only one of dazzling triumph, but also one of history's most haunting mysteries. What do you think was the real reason behind the mysterious collapse of the Khmer Empire? Was it war, climate change, or something else entirely? Share your thoughts in the comments below. I'd love to hear your theories. From the 9th century, under King Jayavarman II, the Khmer began building a mighty empire in the heart of Cambodia. For more than 600 years, Angkor expanded its territory, controlling much of Cambodia, Laos, Thailand, and even part of southern Vietnam. With an advanced agricultural base sustained by an enormous hydraulic system, Angkor's population is estimated to have reached nearly 1 million, an immense figure compared to many medieval cities elsewhere in the world. It was not only militarily powerful, but also rich in culture, art, and religion. If one symbol stands above all for the Khmer, it is undoubtedly Angkor Wat. Constructed under King Suryavarman II in the 12th century, the temple was originally dedicated to Vishnu of Hinduism. With its colossal scale, perfect symmetry, and kilometers of bas-reliefs depicting Hindu mythology, Angkor Wat became one of Asia's greatest architectural marvels. By the 14th century, when Buddhism became the state religion, Angkor Wat transformed into a Buddhist temple, a role it still maintains today. At the heart of Angkor's success lay its vast hydraulic system. The Khmer built hundreds of kilometers of canals, massive reservoirs, barrages, and sophisticated dams to regulate water for agriculture. This allowed for enormous rice production, sustaining the large population and fueling the empire's economy. It was this system that enabled Angkor to flourish as one of the largest urban centers of the medieval world, outshining many European cities of the same era. Beyond Angkor Wat, the Khmer left behind numerous monumental works, Angkor Thom, with the Bayon Temple, featuring hundreds of giant stone faces, Ta Prohm, where colossal tree roots entwine with ancient walls, creating a hauntingly mystical landscape. Khmer art extended beyond architecture to intricate sculpture, most notably the Apsara dances, embodying grace and spirituality, symbols of the union between the material and the divine. The Khmer were initially deeply influenced by Hinduism, dedicating temples to Vishnu and Shiva. Over time, however, Buddhism spread and eventually became the dominant religion. This shift left a profound mark on Khmer art and architecture, where many temples now display a fascinating blend of Hindu and Buddhist elements. It is a cultural fusion that reflects the adaptability and spiritual fluidity of the Khmer civilization. Under rulers such as Suryavarman II and Jayavarman VII, Angkor reached its pinnacle. Jayavarman VII in particular became renowned for public works, building hospitals, rest houses, and the Bayon Temple with its serene, smiling faces believed to reflect his own image. During this golden era, the Khmer Empire was not only a cultural beacon, but also a dominant military power across Southeast Asia. The collapse of the Khmer Empire is regarded as one of the greatest enigmas in the history of Southeast Asia. From a once mighty power that controlled vast territories, within only a few centuries, Angkor had become an abandoned city swallowed by the jungle. By the 15th century, its magnificent monuments and colossal waterworks were deserted. Its people had left the capital, and a civilization that once rivaled Egypt, China, and India suddenly vanished. What truly happened to the Khmer? This is the very question archaeologists, historians, and climate scientists have struggled to answer for decades. One common hypothesis suggests the downfall began with wars against Siam. Records state that in 1431, Siamese forces invaded and captured Angkor, delivering a decisive blow to the Khmer Empire. Yet relying on a single invasion cannot fully explain such a prolonged and irreversible decline, since powerful empires often recover after warfare. For this reason, many scholars argue that war was only the final spark, igniting a process of decay that had already been smoldering. Recent scientific studies indicate that climate change may have been a crucial factor. Analyses of soil cores and ancient tree rings reveal that the region endured catastrophic droughts lasting decades, interspersed with extreme rainy seasons that caused devastating floods. These dramatic fluctuations disrupted the vast Khmer hydraulic system, the very foundation of agriculture and daily life, pushing it into crisis. Rice could no longer sustain the empire's immense population, leading to famine, social unrest, and the weakening of central authority. At the same time, the hydraulic network, once the pride of Angkor, revealed its fatal vulnerability. The massive reservoirs and canals required constant upkeep and careful management. As climate pressures mounted, sediments clogged waterways, dams broke, and human resources dwindled. The system faltered, and once agriculture collapsed, the entire socio-economic structure of the empire crumbled with it. In addition, religious and political changes further undermined Angkor. The shift from Hinduism to Buddhism altered the power structure, eroding the political unity once rooted in divine authority. As centralized belief fragmented royal control over society, weakened, leaving the empire vulnerable to outside attacks and internal conflict. What makes this mystery especially compelling is that no single cause can adequately explain Angkor's disappearance. Instead, researchers today believe it was the convergence of multiple factors: war climate, the decline of the hydraulic system, and religious political upheaval that together brought down a civilization once so radiant it seemed immortal. And it is the silence of the centuries when Angkor lay hidden beneath the jungle that has transformed the Khmer story into one of the most haunting enigmas in human history. Even in decline, the Khmer legacy endures. Today, Angkor Wat is Cambodia's national symbol, proudly displayed on the flag and cherished as a source of identity. The Angkor complex is a UNESCO World Heritage Site, drawing millions of visitors each year. The art of Apsara dance, Khmer sculpture, and Buddhist traditions continue to shape Cambodian culture in modern times. The Khmer, Angkor stands as a vivid testament to history's cycles of rise and fall. From a mighty empire with unmatched engineering and artistry, they built works of eternal value that the world still admires. At the same time, their mysterious decline reminds us that no civilization is immortal. To this day, the true cause of Angkor's collapse remains unanswered, and perhaps it is precisely this mystery that has transformed the Khmer civilization into one of the most enduring legends in world history. What if a book existed that no one on Earth could read? A manuscript filled with over 200 mysterious symbols, written page after page with a logic we cannot crack, and illustrated with scenes where Christianity, Islam, and Buddhism seem to collide. This is not fiction. This is the Codex Rohonczi, a baffling text that appeared in Hungary in the 19th century and has haunted historians, linguists, and cryptographers ever since. More than just another historical riddle, it is a puzzle that challenges our very understanding of language, faith, and cultural memory. At its heart lies the greatest enigma of all, a writing system that has resisted every attempt at decipherment, leaving us to wonder, was it the voice of a lost civilization, a sacred code, or the most elaborate hoax in history? And now, I'd love to hear your thoughts. If you were holding the Codex Rohonczi in your hands, would you believe it to be the language of a vanished civilization, a secret religious code, or the most elaborate hoax in history? Share your opinion in the comments below. The key element that makes the Codex Rohonczi one of the most mysterious manuscripts in human history is its undeciphered writing system. While most familiar alphabets, such as Latin, Greek, or Cyrillic, contain only a few dozen characters, the Codex Rohonczi features more than 200 distinct symbols. This staggering number has left scholars wondering, is it a complete alphabet, a complex form of shorthand, or in fact, a cipher system designed to conceal information. The symbols are not written at random. They repeat in a regular pattern, forming clear sentence-like sequences that suggest the presence of an underlying grammatical structure. This has given rise to the hypothesis that the Codex Rohonczi might represent a real language that has vanished along with the community that once used it. For more than a century and a half, many scholars have tried to decode it. Some believe the symbols are a condensed form of Old Hungarian, while others connect them to Sanskrit or an unrecorded Indo-European language. A few linguists have gone further, suggesting it is an artificial language created for religious or political purposes, or simply to manufacture an eternal mystery. Yet so far, every effort has failed. No translation has produced a consistent meaning, and there is no clear evidence linking the script to any known writing system. What confounds researchers most is the manuscript's detail and consistency. If the Codex Rohonczi were merely an 18th–19th century hoax, then it would have to be one of the most sophisticated ever conceived. After all, no forger would likely invent more than 200 characters and then use them repeatedly with clear patterns across nearly 450 pages. Furthermore, the distribution of the symbols in the text shows not only repetition, but also deliberate arrangement, hinting at a complete grammatical framework. In fact, some passages resemble sentence structures, with certain recurring characters seemingly playing grammatical roles, similar to articles, prepositions, or pronouns. The greatest question remains, to whom did this language belong? To date, no culture in European or neighboring history has been recorded as using a writing system even remotely similar. If it was truly the voice of a vanished community, then their disappearance must have been so absolute that they left no trace other than this manuscript. Another theory proposes that the language may have been devised by a marginal group within European society using writing as a tool for internal secrecy. Whatever the case, the undeciphered script of the Codex Rohonczi continues to rank among the world's greatest unsolved enigmas, standing alongside the Voynich Manuscript and the Rongorongo script of Easter Island, sustaining a mysterious allure that remains unbroken to this day. One of the most intriguing aspects of the Codex Rohonczi is its illustrations with hundreds of drawings spread throughout the manuscript. Their content is extremely diverse: scenes of battles, religious rituals, depictions of executions, astronomical observations, and even glimpses of community life. What stands out most is the simultaneous presence of multiple religious symbols, crosses reminiscent of Christianity, signs associated with Islam, and even details with a Buddhist influence. The coexistence of such varied religious elements within a single book has puzzled researchers, as it contradicts the conventional understanding of distinct, separated faith traditions. Some theories suggest the manuscript was the product of a small community that embraced multiple beliefs, while others argue that this strange fusion might have been a deliberate choice by the author to mislead the reader, transforming the Codex Rohonczi into a mystery intentionally designed never to be solved. The origins of the Codex Rohonczi remain a subject of fierce debate to this day. The manuscript first came to light in the early 19th century, when Hungarian Count Gustav Batthyány left it in his family library. From that moment, it quickly drew the attention of scholars, while also sparking endless controversy. Some historians argue the book may date back to the Middle Ages, reflecting a vanished culture or religion. Others insist it was merely a product of the 18th–19th centuries, created either as an academic hoax or an experiment in cryptography. Yet, if it were truly a forgery, it would undoubtedly be one of the most sophisticated ever conceived. Not only does it feature an unprecedented writing system, but it also contains hundreds of detailed illustrations, enough to give the impression of a serious and purposeful work rather than something made casually or for amusement. The Codex Rohonczi is often compared to the Voynich Manuscript, a more famous enigma now preserved at Yale University. Both contain undeciphered writing systems and puzzling illustrations, creating similarities that lead scholars to frequently study them side by side. However, the key difference lies in their content. The Voynich Manuscript focuses heavily on plants, astrology, and natural elements, while the Codex Rohonczi leans toward historical aspects, rituals, and a blend of religions. This distinction makes Rohonczi both reminiscent of Voynich and yet set apart as a unique case regarded as an exception in the history of ancient manuscripts, further strengthening its mysterious status in academic circles. To this very day, the Codex Rohonczi remains an unsolved mystery. Some scholars believe it may truly be the legacy of a vanished civilization or community preserving traces of an independent writing system never before recognized. Others lean toward the theory that it is a form of religious or political cipher created to safeguard information too sensitive for its time. Still, many argue the entire manuscript might be nothing more than an elaborate hoax crafted by an intellectual fond of wordplay and riddles to perplex future generations. Whatever the truth, this book continues to fascinate researchers and the public alike, standing alongside other unsolved enigmas such as Rongorongo of Easter Island and the Tartaria tablets of Romania. In summary, the most extraordinary and defining feature of the Codex Rohonczi Hungary is its undeciphered language and script. It is not just a random collection of symbols, but a complex system that seems to follow grammar and meaning, yet matches no known language. Its existence raises profound questions about whether there may once have been an entire writing system, a language, or even a civilization that has vanished completely from history. For this reason, the Codex Rohonczi remains one of the greatest enigmas of archaeology and linguistics to this very day. Imagine a book written 6 centuries ago, filled with plants that don't exist, stars, mapped in strange constellations, and naked figures immersed in mysterious green pools. But the greatest puzzle isn't in the images, it lies in the text itself. Page after page, line after line. The words are written in an alphabet no one has ever seen before. For over 600 years, the Voynich Manuscript has mocked the brightest cryptographers, baffled linguists, and defied even the power of artificial intelligence. What secret is it hiding? A lost science, a coded spellbook, or a knowledge not meant for human eyes? And now, it's your turn. If the Voynich Manuscript truly holds a secret, what do you think it could be? A lost science, an encrypted spellbook, or something entirely different? Share your thoughts in the comments below. The most distinctive feature that makes the Voynich Manuscript a legend is its mysterious writing system, commonly referred to as Voynichese. These are not meaningless scribbles, but a complete set of characters, orderly and governed by strict rules. Linguists and cryptographers have pointed out that the text is built from about 20-30 main symbols, with several variations. Statistical analysis shows that the distribution of words in the manuscript strongly resembles that of natural languages. There are short and long words, stable repetition frequencies, and even recurring phrases that appear mainly at the beginning or end of lines, similar to how articles, prepositions, or grammatical endings function in modern languages. This systematic structure has convinced many scholars that the book truly carries information, not just empty deception. Yet the perplexing reality remains. Although it shows all the hallmarks of a genuine language, no one has ever been able to read it. Voynich seems to exist outside every known linguistic framework, creating a paradox, a writing system with the structure of human speech, but belonging to no language in recorded history. This paradox is precisely what makes the manuscript both credible and hauntingly mysterious. For centuries, the Voynich manuscript has stood as a formidable challenge for scholars, linguists, and cryptographers alike. In the 17th century, Jesuit researchers attempted to compare its strange script with Latin Greek and ancient Hebrew, but every effort ended in failure. By the 20th century, as cryptography reached new heights during wartime, the Voynich manuscript was once again placed under scrutiny. The FBI and CIA both examined it, hoping that decoding algorithms could unlock its secrets, yet they too were forced to abandon the quest when no consistent patterns emerged. Entering the 21st century, with the rise of artificial intelligence and advanced statistical language models, researchers continued to probe its mysteries. Some proposed that the text resembled ancient Hebrew, others detected similarities to the Romance language family, while still others argued it was an elaborate cipher built on character substitution. However, all of these theories remained speculative, lacking conclusive proof and failing to produce a coherent translation. Despite humanity's extraordinary technological progress, one fact remains unchanged to this day. No one has been able to state with certainty what content truly lies hidden within the Voynich manuscript. One of the most captivating aspects of the Voynich manuscript is its strange system of illustrations, which only deepens the veil of mystery surrounding it. Across many pages are detailed drawings of plants, yet most cannot be matched to any known species in nature. Some even appear as hybrids of different plants, leading researchers to suspect they may represent medicinal herbs that have long been lost. Beyond the botanical imagery, the manuscript also contains astronomical diagrams with unfamiliar constellations, enigmatic astrological charts, and depictions of nude women immersed in green liquid connected by complex pipes and pools. Together, these elements create the impression that the book might be a comprehensive body of knowledge combining medicine, pharmacology, and astrology intended for a vanished community or civilization. And yet its true purpose remains an unsolved mystery. What makes the Voynich manuscript both credible and mysterious is the scientific evidence confirming its age. Radiocarbon dating shows that the vellum used for its pages dates to around 1404–1438, perfectly consistent with the medieval period in Europe. Moreover, the composition of the ink matches the methods of ink production from that era, the same type commonly found in other manuscripts of the time. These findings have effectively ruled out the theory of a modern forgery, confirming that the book truly originated in the 15th century and carries genuine historical value rather than being a fabricated creation of later times. The journey of the Voynich manuscript through its various owners is just as fascinating as the content within. In the 16th–17th centuries, the book appeared in the library of Emperor Rudolph II of the Holy Roman Empire, a man deeply passionate about alchemy who was said to have paid a great sum to possess it. Later, the manuscript was kept by Jesuit scholars, but gradually disappeared from official records for centuries, almost fading into oblivion. It wasn't until 1912 that Wilfrid Voynich, a Polish antiquarian book dealer, stumbled upon it in a monastery in Italy and brought it back into the light. From then on, the book bore his name, becoming one of the most haunting enigmas in human history. Surrounding the Voynich language, countless theories have been proposed over the centuries, each opening a new path of speculation, yet none backed by definitive proof. Some scholars believe it to be a complex cipher system designed to conceal medical or philosophical knowledge from the strict control of the medieval church. Others argue that Voynich may have been a lost language, once spoken by a small community that eventually vanished along with its culture. Meanwhile, skeptics suggest the entire manuscript might simply be an elaborate medieval hoax crafted to impress or sell to curious nobles. However, the text's consistent and intricate structure makes this theory difficult to sustain, for it seems unlikely that someone could create such a sophisticated system without embedding real information within it. At the farthest extreme, some more mythical views claim it to be knowledge from an extraterrestrial civilization left behind as a message for humanity. While each theory is fascinating in its own right, none has ever proven entirely convincing, leaving the Voynich Manuscript an enigma without resolution. What is astonishing is that across eras from the Middle Ages through the Renaissance to the digital age, the Voynich Manuscript remains undeciphered. It symbolizes the limits of human knowledge, a text existing before our eyes, yet unreadable. Today, the manuscript has been digitized and made public for anyone to study. Thousands of professional and amateur researchers continue to chase its secrets. Yet so far, every attempt has only thickened the veil of mystery. The Voynich Manuscript 15th century is not just an old book, it is a cross-century intellectual challenge. At its core, the undeciphered language is the key. It stands like a message from a distant past, reminding us that no matter how advanced human intelligence becomes, there will always be secrets beyond our grasp. Perhaps it is precisely this mystery that makes the Voynich Manuscript one of the most captivating enigmas in the history of civilization. Not all great mysteries come in the form of towering monuments or golden treasures. Sometimes the most unsettling secrets of our past hide in the smallest of objects. In 1961, deep in Transylvania, Romania, archaeologist Nicolae Vlasă unearthed 3 fragile clay tablets no larger than the palm of a hand. On their surfaces were strange carved symbols, marks that looked too deliberate to be random, yet too alien to be understood. Could these tiny tablets prove that humanity invented writing thousands of years earlier than history books claim? From that moment on, the Tartaria tablets became one of the most hotly debated enigmas in archaeology, an unsolved riddle that still challenges our understanding of civilization itself. Do you think the Tartaria tablets are humanity's earliest form of writing, or just mysterious ritual symbols with no linguistic meaning? Share your thoughts in the comments below. I'd love to hear your theory. The Tartaria tablets have been dated to around 5,300–5,500 BCE, an exceptionally early stage of the Neolithic era when humans were only beginning to settle permanently, practice agriculture, and form the first rudimentary communities. What is striking is that this timeline does not lag behind and may even predate Sumerian cuneiform, long regarded as humanity's earliest writing system in Mesopotamia. This discovery raises a profound question. Was the invention of writing not confined to the Middle East, but perhaps developed independently in Europe within the Vinca culture that spread across the Balkans? If so, the history of writing is no longer a tale of a single cradle, but evidence of the diversity and extraordinary creativity of multiple prehistoric communities worldwide. When archaeologists and linguists first examined the 3 Tartaria tablets, what puzzled them most was not the clay material or the small size of the artifacts, but the symbols carved onto their surfaces. They noted the presence of simple geometric shapes such as straight lines, crosses, and diagonals alongside animal-like figures and abstract motifs that were difficult to interpret. Some of the signs bore a superficial resemblance to early Sumerian cuneiform, yet the majority were entirely unfamiliar with no direct parallels in any known writing system. This blend of the half-familiar and the alien sparked a crucial question. Were these the traces of a primitive written language, or merely ritualistic symbols with religious meaning, lacking the true function of recording spoken language? This is the most distinctive and controversial point about the Tartaria tablets to this day. No one has been able to convincingly decipher them. For more than half a century, scholars have offered countless theories, ranging from the idea that they were simply ritual offerings to the claim that they represented a proto-writing system. Some believe they may have recorded a calendar, magical incantations, or even astronomical charts. Others argue that they are evidence that the Vinca culture developed an independent form of writing, one that coexisted with cuneiform. What troubles researchers most is the half-familiar, half-alien nature of the symbols. If they looked entirely like cuneiform, one might assume cultural borrowing. But since they are both similar and different, they suggest something far more remarkable. Perhaps multiple centers of writing emerged independently across the world, not only in Mesopotamia or Egypt. If true, this would mean that Neolithic Europe was much more complex than previously imagined. Linguistic studies attempting to compare the Tartaria signs with other early writing systems have yielded no conclusive results. Some symbols resemble crosses, others look like fish, and still others form geometric networks. Western scholars have proposed that they might represent religious concepts such as the sun-moon or deities. In contrast, some Eastern European archaeologists argue that they are proof of a lost language, a symbolic system that once existed and disappeared along with the Vinca culture. The greatest challenge is that the Tartaria tablets are isolated artifacts, not accompanied by a larger corpus of texts. With cuneiform or Egyptian hieroglyphs, scholars had thousands of inscriptions and even bilingual texts, such as the Rosetta Stone, to work with. But for the Tartaria symbols, we have only a few dozen signs with no context and no discernible grammar. This makes every attempt at decipherment fall into a vicious circle, too little evidence to determine whether they truly represent writing. And yet it is precisely this mystery that fuels the fascination with Tartaria. Scholars still argue passionately today. One camp insists that they cannot be considered writing, since true writing must represent spoken language, and the tablets lack sufficient proof. The other camp counters, if they are not writing, then how do we explain their formal similarities to other Balkan symbols or to proto-cuneiform signs in Sumer? Perhaps here we see the sprouting of a writing system, one that never fully developed before vanishing with a prehistoric culture. The issue of deciphering Tartaria is not merely an academic quarrel. It touches on a far greater question: where and when did human writing truly begin? We have long believed that writing was invented by a few major civilizations, such as Sumer, Egypt, or China. But if the Tartaria symbols are indeed writing, it proves that other communities also reached a high enough level of social organization and abstract thought to invent their own recording systems. This would mean that human civilization is far more diverse, multi-centered, and rich than we ever imagined. Today, Romanian museums still display those 3 tiny tablets as national archaeological treasures. They remind us that countless secrets of the past remain unsolved. Each carved mark on the clay feels like a message sent from thousands of years ago, telling us that our ancestors once had ideas, symbols, and perhaps even a language of their own that we have since lost. It is precisely this undeciphered nature that makes the Tartaria tablets so special. They stand as a symbol of the incompleteness of human knowledge. We know much, yet so much remains hidden. Every carved line might represent the name of a deity, a prayer, a record of harvests, or even a social contract. But they might also be mere ritual symbols with no linguistic meaning. Either way, Tartaria reminds us that history is never a straight line. It is full of grey zones and blank spaces we have yet to fill. Perhaps that is why the Tartaria tablets continue to captivate not only archaeologists, but also the wider public. They spark imagination, forcing us to ask if this truly was writing. Must we rewrite history? And if not, why did our ancestors carve these signs, carefully preserve them, and bury them with ritual importance? The answer may still lie buried beneath the soils of Transylvania, or may be lost forever. But as long as this secret remains unsolved, the Tartaria tablets will endure as one of humanity's most intriguing and controversial archaeological mysteries. Imagine a world over 4,000 years ago where people built cities with straight roads, underground drainage, and public baths, while much of humanity was still living in scattered villages. This was the Indus Valley civilization, stretching across today's India and Pakistan. At its height, it rivaled Egypt and Mesopotamia in brilliance, yet it looked nothing like them. No towering pyramids, no war monuments, no mighty kings carved in stone. Instead, it was a society of balanced trade and astonishing organization. But then, in one of history's most haunting mysteries, this great civilization seemed to vanish almost overnight. How could millions of people living in cities more advanced than many that came centuries later simply fade into silence? So, what do you think really happened to the Indus Valley civilization? Was it climate change, natural disasters, or some reason we still don't know? Share your thoughts and theories in the comments below. One of the most remarkable aspects of the Indus people was their ability to design cities. Settlements such as Mohenjo-Daro, Harappa, Kalibangan, and Lothal were built with main avenues and side streets laid out in a grid pattern intersecting at right angles, just like modern cities today. Each neighborhood had its own well-public reservoirs and, most impressively, an underground sewage system built from baked bricks. Astonishingly, the Indus people already knew how to channel wastewater away from residential zones to avoid pollution, a concept of sanitation far ahead of many later civilizations. Archaeological remains show that houses often had standardized dimensions, built with uniformly sized baked bricks. This uniformity points to a centralized and well-organized government. Even public structures, such as the Great Bath of Mohenjo-Daro, believed to have been used either for communal bathing or religious rituals, reflect a society with strong communal values and a rich spiritual life. Beyond urban planning, the Indus people demonstrated exceptional construction skills. Their baked bricks were manufactured with near-perfect precision, standardized in size, a feat rare in other civilizations of the time. Massive granaries, defensive walls, and ancient docks at Lothal reveal that Indus society thrived not only inland, but also in overseas trade. Strikingly, archaeological evidence suggests that the Indus society was remarkably egalitarian. Unlike Egypt with its grand palaces and tombs for pharaohs, or Mesopotamia with its towering monuments for kings, the Indus left no clear signs of social elites. Instead, the remains suggest a society focused on community welfare, where resources were distributed more evenly. The Indus people were not isolated. Their trade networks extended as far as Mesopotamia, Persia, and the Persian Gulf. Indus seals, small baked clay tablets engraved with animal motifs and mysterious symbols, have been found in sites across Iraq and Iran, proving the vast extent of their commerce. These seals likely served as some of the earliest forms of trademarks or commercial identifiers. In addition to land trade, evidence from port cities such as Lothal shows that they also engaged in maritime commerce. From there, goods like pearls, precious stones, timber, and cotton textiles were exported abroad, transforming the Indus into a hub of international trade. Perhaps the greatest unsolved mystery of the Indus Valley is their writing system. Thousands of seals, pottery shards, and tablets bear unique symbols. Yet, despite extensive global research, this script remains undeciphered. As a result, we know very little about their language, philosophy, religion, or political organization. If one day this code is cracked, it may unlock entirely new insights into how the Indus world functioned. Artifacts reveal many small figurines of women thought to represent the mother goddess, symbolizing fertility. Images of sacred bulls and seals depicting figures in meditation-like postures resemble later Hindu deities, particularly Shiva. Many scholars therefore believe that elements of Hinduism may trace their roots back to the Indus Valley. Another striking fact is the apparent absence of war. Compared to other ancient civilizations, archaeological evidence of weapons, fortifications, or depictions of battles is minimal. No lavish tombs of warrior kings have been found. Some scholars argue that the Indus might have been one of the most peaceful societies in antiquity, a community centered on trade, production, and spiritual life rather than conquest. The collapse of the Indus Valley civilization is one of the greatest mysteries in human history, sparking endless debates among archaeologists, historians, and environmental scientists for centuries. After reaching its peak between 2600 and 1900 BCE, once bustling cities like Mohenjo-Daro and Harappa began to decline noticeably. The underground drainage system, once maintained with precision, gradually fell into disrepair and was abandoned. Many densely populated neighborhoods turned desolate, and by around 1500 BCE, most urban centers had completely disappeared from the historical map. What particularly confounds researchers is that this decline did not occur through violence or bloodshed, but quietly and silently, as if millions of inhabitants had simply walked away from their cities to some distant unknown. Theories about the cause are highly diverse, each offering a different perspective on the fragility of ancient societies. Some geological evidence suggests that climate change played a decisive role. Major rivers, including the Saraswati, the legendary river of the Vedic texts, gradually dried up, causing the collapse of agriculture that depended on irrigation. With harvests failing, populations lost their food supply, leading to the abandonment of cities. Other studies suggest that Mohenjo-Daro may have been devastated multiple times by flooding, or that earthquakes altered river courses, cutting off vital water sources for entire regions. 19th and 20th century scholars emphasize the incursion of Aryan peoples from Central Asia, but this theory is now doubted due to the lack of evidence for large-scale warfare. Additionally, the possibilities of epidemic disease or the disruption of international trade networks are mentioned, since an economy so dependent on far-reaching exchanges could easily crumble if those roots were broken. What is most peculiar and haunting is the silent nature of the disappearance. There are no layers of ash from warfare, no evidence of massacres, no traces of violent destruction. All that remains are abandoned cities, mysterious engraved seals, deserted houses, and sewage systems left unused. It was this quiet retreat that turned the Indus Valley civilization into an eternal enigma. A society that once reached the pinnacle of urban planning, international trade, and communal organization could vanish without leaving behind any convincing explanation. And that is precisely why, even today, this civilization continues to compel humanity to ask what really happened to them. The Indus Valley Civilization, India. Pakistan proves that thousands of years ago, humans had already mastered urban design, construction, egalitarian social systems, and international trade at a level astonishing even by modern standards. Yet, like many great civilizations, it could not withstand the forces of history, climate shifts, natural disasters, and social changes led to its decline. What makes it truly unique is the mystery of its disappearance. It was not conquered in fire. It left no records of war, but rather slipped quietly off the stage of human history. To this day, the question, what really happened to the Indus people, remains unsolved, fueling the curiosity of archaeologists, historians, and anyone fascinated by the great puzzles of the past. Hidden deep within the blazing deserts of Jordan lies a city unlike any other Petra, the legendary rose-red city, half as old as time. Its towering facades are not built but carved directly into colossal cliffs of sandstone, glowing at dawn and dusk like fire frozen in stone. This was the masterpiece of the Nabataeans, a people once so powerful that they controlled the lifeblood of ancient trade routes and turned a barren desert into a thriving oasis of wealth and culture. Yet for all their brilliance, the Nabataeans vanished almost without a trace. No grand war erased them. No single catastrophe consumed them. They simply faded, leaving behind silent monuments that whisper of forgotten glories. How could such a people, engineers of water, masters of trade, architects of stone, rise so high only to disappear so completely? What do you think happened to the Nabataeans? Was it earthquakes, shifting trade routes, climate change, or something even more mysterious? Share your thoughts and theories in the comments below. The Nabataeans were originally nomadic Arab tribes, beginning as small groups scattered across the Arabian Peninsula. But around the 4th century BCE, they gradually settled in the area now known as Jordan, particularly in the valley of pink sandstone cliffs. It was here that they created Petra, the rose-red city, a wonder that astonished the world. Unlike many civilizations that built cities with brick or stacked stone, the Nabataeans carved directly into cliffs. Monumental structures, from palaces and tombs to temples, were all chiseled into the sandstone mountains. The combination of nature and human craftsmanship created a landscape both wild and majestic, so much so that when Petra was rediscovered in the 19th century, many Western scholars doubted it could have been the work of ancient people. Beyond their stone architecture, the Nabataeans were also masters of hydraulic engineering. Living in an arid desert where rain was rare and rivers were almost non-existent, they devised sophisticated systems of channels, cisterns, underground dams, and conduits to collect and distribute water. Thanks to this, Petra became a flourishing oasis that sustained tens of thousands of inhabitants and served as a crucial stop along the incense route, a trade network linking Arabia and India with the Mediterranean. Wealth quickly transformed the Nabataeans into transcontinental merchants. They controlled valuable goods such as frankincense, myrrh, spices, gold, silver, and even luxury items from the east like silk and pearls. Their caravans stretched across the desert, from Yemen and Oman through Petra and onward to Greece and Rome. With its strategic position, the Nabataean kingdom grew rich not only from trade, but also from being a cultural intermediary blending Eastern and Western influences. Evidence of this can be seen in Petra's art and architecture. Greek and Roman elements, such as Corinthian columns, arches, and grand facades, stand alongside distinctly Arab and Persian motifs, forming a style unique and inimitable. The Nabataeans developed their own writing system, the Nabataean Aramaic script, which later played a major role in shaping the modern Arabic alphabet. Their religion was equally diverse, with Dushara, a mountain god, and the goddess Al-Uzza as central deities. Rituals were closely tied to mountains, and the sky and their altars and shrines were often built on high places, evoking a sense of humans reaching toward the divine. What is most intriguing about the Nabataeans is not only their prosperity, but also their mysterious decline. By the 1st century BCE, Petra had reached its zenith, so wealthy and powerful that Roman historians admired it. Yet within just 2 centuries, the Nabataean kingdom began to weaken rapidly. One of the key reasons behind the decline of the Nabataeans was their annexation into the Roman Empire. In 106 CE, Rome officially took control of the entire Nabataean territory, turning Petra into part of the province of Arabia Petraea. At first, this seemed beneficial. The city remained prosperous, and even new Roman-style structures were built, proving that Petra was still an important center in the region. However, the Roman authorities gradually shifted their trade strategy, prioritizing maritime routes through the Red Sea, which were faster and less risky than long desert caravans. This shift stripped Petra, whose lifeblood was caravan trade, of its strategic value. Caravans became fewer, wealth and resources dwindled, and the very economic foundation that had once allowed the Nabataeans to flourish began to collapse. Beyond economic factors, natural disasters and environmental changes also played a crucial role in the decline of the Nabataeans. The Petra region lies on a seismic fault line and has endured several major earthquakes throughout history. Most notably, the devastating quake of 363 CE caused catastrophic destruction. Countless structures collapsed, temples and tombs suffered severe damage, and most critically, the sophisticated network of channels and reservoirs, the very lifeline of Petra, was heavily damaged. With dwindling resources and a shrinking population, the Nabataeans no longer had the capacity to fully restore their city. At the same time, the Middle East was entering a drier climatic phase with decreasing rainfall and worsening water scarcity. These shifts transformed Petra from a prosperous oasis into a harsh and inhospitable place, forcing many inhabitants to abandon it for more sustainable regions. This combination of disaster and environmental stress became one of the decisive factors that led Petra to be gradually deserted and the Nabataeans to fade from history. By the 7th century, as Islam spread across the Arabian Peninsula, the name Nabataean had almost vanished from all official records. Petra, once a thriving commercial hub, was abandoned, gradually buried under the sands of time, and forgotten by the outside world for centuries. All that remained were colossal rock facades carved into tombs and temples, standing like a ghost city in the desert. The local Bedouins still knew of the site and regarded it as sacred, passing down mysterious legends through oral tradition. Yet to the wider world, Petra had all but disappeared until 1812, when Swiss explorer Johann Ludwig Burckhardt, disguised as a pilgrim, secretly rediscovered the city. This event reignited the imagination of the West and brought Petra back into the light of history. But the Nabataeans, the true masters of this marvel, remained shrouded in the shadows of mystery. The disappearance of the Nabataeans remains one of history's great enigmas. Unlike other civilizations, they were not conquered violently, nor did they vanish in a single catastrophic event. Instead, they gradually dissolved into larger surrounding societies, leaving Petra as the sole witness of their former greatness. Today, Petra is not only recognized as a UNESCO World Heritage Site, but also as one of the new 7 wonders of the world. Yet behind its glowing rose-red walls, the question lingers: why did such an intelligent, wealthy, and creative people disappear almost without a trace? Perhaps it is a reminder that every civilization, no matter how glorious, can be swept away by time and the changing world. And perhaps it is precisely this mysterious decline that ensures the Nabataeans will forever haunt the imagination of humankind. In human history, there are artifacts that exist like doors opening into a lost ancient world, and the more we examine them, the more overwhelmed we become by the complexity and mystery of the past. Liber Linteus, often called the Zagreb Linen Book, is a prime example. It is not only the longest surviving text of the Etruscan civilization, a brilliant culture that once thrived in Italy before the rise of Rome, but it also has a strange preservation story discovered within the wrappings of an Egyptian mummy. Yet what makes Liber Linteus truly remarkable, puzzling scholars and archaeology enthusiasts for centuries, is the Etruscan language written upon it, a script still not fully deciphered to this day. Question for the audience. If you stumbled upon an ancient manuscript, like the Liber Linteus, where every letter is visible, but the meaning is lost, would you see it as a mysterious treasure waiting to be unlocked, or as a secret that time itself wants to keep forever? The Etruscans were once a powerful force in central Italy, especially in the region of modern Tuscany. They left behind significant marks in architecture, art, and religion, but their language belonged to an isolated group difficult to place into any Indo-European branch. While Greek, Latin, and even Egyptian hieroglyphs have all been deciphered, Etruscan remains a shadow only partially understood through short inscriptions, tomb markers, and loanwords found in Latin. Liber Linteus provides humanity with a priceless treasury of words, nearly 200 words preserved on linen fabric. It is the longest Etruscan text ever discovered. Yet ironically, its survival has not unlocked the key to comprehension, but has instead deepened the mystery even further. Many scholars believe that the Liber Linteus was originally a religious ritual calendar of the Etruscans used to record festivals, sacrificial rites, and ceremonies closely tied to their spiritual life. This assumption comes from the systematic repetition of certain phrases, the use of numbers, as well as the appearance of the names of several familiar deities. For example, references have been found to the goddess Uni, equivalent to Hera in Greek mythology, or Juno in Roman tradition, along with vocabulary linked to sacrifice and offerings. Yet aside from these scattered clues, the majority of the text remains an enigma. Its long and complex sentences cannot be fully interpreted, leaving the Liber Linteus as a sacred ritual manuscript that later generations can only touch on the surface of without truly grasping the deeper meaning the Etruscans intended to preserve. The greatest challenge in studying the Liber Linteus lies in the Etruscan language itself. It is not an Indo-European tongue, and thus stands completely apart from Latin or Greek, which are far more familiar to scholars. Its grammar, vocabulary, and syntax appear isolated with no clear connection to any known system, making comparative analysis extremely limited. Although the Etruscan alphabet was adapted from ancient Greek and the characters can be read, reading does not equate to understanding. We may pronounce each word, yet the deeper meaning hidden within the sentences remains a dark realm untouched by modern knowledge. For centuries, linguists have patiently analyzed the Liber Linteus, comparing every line with the few surviving traces of Etruscan tomb inscriptions, carvings on pottery, short texts on metal, and especially loanwords preserved in Latin. Yet the remaining corpus of Etruscan is far too small, often fragmentary and disconnected, making the reconstruction of a complete linguistic system nearly impossible. Instead of offering answers, the Liber Linteus, with its hundreds of lines, still stands like a silent wall of letters, stubbornly refusing to reveal the secrets it guards. Curiously, the manuscript was discovered in Egypt. In the 19th century, when a mummy was purchased in Alexandria and brought to Europe, scholars noticed that the wrappings were not typical Egyptian cloth. Further study revealed that it was in fact an Etruscan book cut apart and reused as linen strips for mummification. By sheer accident, the text was preserved. Without this, it likely would have decayed centuries ago, like countless other fabric artifacts. The existence of Liber Linteus raises intriguing questions. Why did an Etruscan manuscript end up in Egypt? Was it part of trade exchanges, or did the Etruscans sell written fabric abroad? Or was it mere coincidence, the recycling of discarded material that no longer held value in Italy but proved useful in Egyptian funerary rituals? The answers remain elusive, and this uncertainty only thickens the veil of mystery surrounding the artifact. Still, the central issue is the undeciphered Etruscan language. In a world where Egyptian hieroglyphs were solved by Champollion through the Rosetta Stone, and cuneiform scripts of Sumer and Babylon have been read again, the stubborn silence of Etruscan makes it a ghost in linguistic history. Each word in Liber Linteus seems like a fragment of a puzzle, but the full picture continues to hide itself. Today, scholars no longer rely solely on traditional linguistic methods, but also combine advanced tools such as digital technology, artificial intelligence, and statistical analysis to study the Liber Linteus. Algorithms are trained to detect recurring patterns, thereby predicting grammatical structures and semantic connections between passages. Some early studies have shown the potential to identify groups of words linked to deities and rituals, opening up new directions of inquiry. Yet the entire text still resembles an enormous cipher without a key, keeping Liber Linteus firmly on the list of the most undecipherable linguistic mysteries in history. This very impasse makes Liber Linteus one of the most unopenable treasures of archaeology. It is tied not only to the lost Etruscan civilization, but also stands as proof of the limits of modern knowledge. The text is long clear and intact, and yet we people of the 21st century remain powerless to access what the ancients once considered sacred and essential. Thus, Liber Linteus is more than just an ancient book. It is a symbol of the distance between us and the ancient world, a reminder that not every secret is easily solved, and that some civilizations may forever guard their language within the mists of time. If one day the Etruscan language is fully deciphered, Liber Linteus could become a priceless sacred text, opening a comprehensive view of Etruscan religion, rituals, and spiritual thought. But until then, it remains on the list of humanity's greatest linguistic mysteries, alongside the Voynich Manuscript, the Indus script, and the Rongorongo glyphs of Easter Island. And perhaps it is this very incompleteness that gives Liber Linteus its enduring allure, a mysterious Etruscan text preserved in an Egyptian mummy existing as a paradox, a fragment that fits no known historical puzzle, forcing humanity to keep searching, questioning, and venturing into the endless quest to uncover the meaning of a lost language. Imagine a civilization so advanced that it built sprawling cities, engineered complex drainage systems, and traded with distant lands, yet left behind a written code that no one on Earth can read. That is the mystery of the Indus Valley script. For over 100 years, archaeologists and linguists have stared at thousands of seals and artifacts carved with strange symbols, fish birds' horns, and abstract marks, yet their voices remain silent. Unlike Egyptian hieroglyphs unlocked by the Rosetta Stone or Mesopotamian cuneiform deciphered through abundant texts, the Indus script stands apart, a sealed message from 4000 years ago, still refusing to reveal its secrets. What do you think lies behind the Indus Valley script? Is it a true written language waiting to be decoded, or just symbolic marks for trade and rituals? Share your thoughts in the comments below. I'd love to hear your theories. The Indus Valley civilization, also known as Harappa, thrived between 2600 and 1900 BCE, stretching across the northwestern region of the Indian subcontinent. It was one of the four cradles of ancient civilization, standing alongside Egypt, Mesopotamia, and China. The people of the Indus built well-planned cities, advanced drainage systems, engaged in long-distance trade, and left behind thousands of exquisite artifacts. Yet unlike Egypt or Mesopotamia, they did not leave behind long historical records, religious scriptures, or legal documents. What survives are only short lines of symbols carved on stone pottery or amulets. The absence of longer texts has made decipherment extremely difficult. The Indus Valley script consists of roughly 400 to 600 distinct signs, each with unique shapes that continue to intrigue scholars. Some resemble familiar animals, such as fish birds, cattle elephants, or rhinoceroses, while others take the form of abstract geometric figures, tools, or stylized human shapes. What is striking is that most inscriptions discovered so far are extremely short, typically only 5 to 10 signs in length, and rarely exceeding 20. This unusual brevity sets the Indus script apart from other ancient writing systems, like Egyptian hieroglyphs or Mesopotamian cuneiform, which often produced long and elaborate texts. Such a difference has sparked intense debate. Was this truly a complete language capable of reflecting daily life laws and religious beliefs? Or was it merely a symbolic system used for trade property marking or ritual purposes? One of the aspects that makes the Indus Valley script so mysterious and captivating is the fact that it remains completely undeciphered despite centuries of effort from scholars. This stems from several key reasons, turning the study of this script into one of the greatest challenges in archaeology and linguistics. First, the Indus script has not left behind any bilingual texts that could serve as a golden key like the Rosetta Stone did for Egyptian hieroglyphs. The signs appear only individually on seals, pottery, or amulets, without any accompanying translations in a known language, leaving researchers with no basis for direct comparison. Second, the inscriptions themselves are extremely short, usually only 5 to 10 signs and rarely exceeding 20. This brevity creates enormous difficulties in analyzing grammar syntax or identifying recurring patterns, leading some scholars to even question whether it was a full writing system or merely symbolic marks. Third, the linguistic foundation of the Indus people remains a major question. Some theories suggest it belonged to the Dravidian language family, others lean toward the Munda family, or even an entirely extinct language with no ties to those that survive today. The lack of comparative data means these theories remain speculative. Finally, the collapse of the Indus civilization around 1900 BCE abruptly ended the development and transmission of the script. Unlike Egypt or China, where writing continued and evolved through successive dynasties, the Indus script disappeared, suddenly leaving behind a massive gap in knowledge that later generations could not fill. The combination of these factors has turned the Indus script into an impenetrable wall, a secret sealed within the flow of history, challenging human intellect and perseverance to this very day. The theories surrounding the meaning of the Indus Valley script remain a colorful mosaic without a definitive answer. Some scholars argue that it was a phonetic writing system, similar to Mesopotamian cuneiform, where each sign represented a syllable. Others believe it was logographic, like Egyptian hieroglyphs, with each symbol expressing a concept or idea. There are even opinions suggesting that the Indus script was not a true language at all, but rather a set of symbolic marks used for trade, religion, or administrative purposes comparable to modern logos or trademarks. However, statistical analyses reveal that these signs follow patterns and sequences characteristic of natural languages, not random marks. For instance, Certain signs appear only at the beginning or end of a line, implying they may have served as grammatical markers or special characters. Yet despite all these insights, no one has been able to read a single word or sentence from this mysterious system. Among the thousands of artifacts discovered, the steatite seals are the most iconic. They typically depict an animal bull-elephant rhinoceros, or the enigmatic Indus unicorn, a creature known only from these seals, alongside a short line of symbols. These seals may have served commercial, administrative, or ritual purposes. They are the primary source for our study of the Indus script. Interestingly, some Indus seals have also been found in Mesopotamia, proving that the Indus people engaged in international trade. This suggests that the script may once have been recognized across regions, though today we have no idea how it was read or understood. The fact that millions once used this system, yet after a few millennia its meaning has vanished entirely, leaves us with a chilling sense of loss. It was once a living language tied to the economy, culture, and religion of a great civilization, but now survives only as a silent sequence of signs. Its shadow evokes the idea of a lost language, a permanently locked door behind which lies a world of knowledge with no surviving key. Today, hundreds of researchers worldwide continue attempts to decipher the Indus script using modern methods, computational linguistics, probability analysis, artificial intelligence. Although small steps have been made, no breakthrough has come. The Indus script remains unyielding, and it may be many years before its secrets are finally unveiled. What makes the Indus Valley script extraordinary is this simple fact: we know it exists, yet we have no idea what it says. It is like a sealed message from the past, defying every generation of scholars. And this silence makes the Indus civilization even more enigmatic. The Indus script is more than a collection of signs. It symbolizes the fragility of human knowledge. No matter how advanced a civilization may be, without transmission, its words can vanish completely. And to this day, the secret lies dormant, awaiting humanity's key to unlock it. Imagine holding in your hands a mysterious clay disc created nearly 4,000 years ago, covered with hundreds of strange symbols, spiraling inward like a secret message. No one knows what it says. No one even knows what language it belongs to. This is the Phaistos Disc, unearthed on the island of Crete, the heart of the Minoan civilization. For over a century, it has defied archaeologists, linguists, and codebreakers alike, standing as one of humanity's greatest unsolved riddles. More than just an artifact, it is a whisper from the ancient world, a script frozen in time, waiting for someone to finally unlock its meaning. What do you think the mysterious symbols on the Phaistos Disc truly mean? Could it be a prayer, a law code, a song, or something completely different? Share your thoughts and theories in the comments below. I'd love to hear your perspective. In 1908, during an excavation at the Palace of Phaistos in southern Crete, Italian archaeologist Luigi Pernier uncovered a strange artifact, a fired clay disc about 15 centimeters in diameter and roughly 2 centimeters thick. What made it remarkable was that it was found within the collapsed layers of the palace, buried for thousands of years, which helped preserve it in relatively good condition. Subsequent analyses dated the disc to around 1700 BCE, right in the flourishing era of the Minoan civilization. From the very moment it was brought to light, the Phaistos Disc shocked the archaeological community, not only because of its simple circular form, but more importantly, because of the hundreds of unusual symbols arranged in a spiral from the outside inward, as if concealing a secret message from a distant past. One of the most remarkable features that makes the Phaistos Disc such a great mystery is the system of symbols stamped on both of its sides. In total, there are 241 signs divided into 45 different types, including depictions of helmeted human faces, animals, birds, plants, weapons, tools, and even abstract symbols. They bear no resemblance to any known writing system, neither Egyptian hieroglyphs nor the Linear A or Linear B scripts famous on Crete. Even more strikingly, these signs were not carved one by one, but appear to have been impressed with small stamps onto soft clay before firing, making the Phaistos Disc one of the rare examples considered the earliest trace of printing technology in human history. Yet its greatest value, and also its greatest challenge, lies in the fact that the language and content of this text remain entirely undeciphered. For more than a century, hundreds of archaeologists, linguists, and codebreakers have attempted to interpret it, but none have reached a consensus. Some suggest it is a hymn, a prayer, a poem, a legal text, or even an ancient game. However, all remain mere hypotheses, since to this day, no other text using the same system of symbols has been found to serve as a key for comparison. This isolation has turned the Phaistos Disc into a silent language of the past one that continues to test the intellect and patience of modern humanity. Unlike other ancient texts, where multiple copies were discovered for study, the Phaistos Disc is a unique artifact. To date, no other object using the same symbols has ever been found. This means scholars have no additional corpus to analyze. In linguistics, deciphering a single isolated text without context or parallels is nearly impossible. That is why the script on the Phaistos Disc remains a silent language, resisting all decoding efforts. For more than a century since its discovery, the Phaistos Disc has been at the center of countless theories and interpretations, yet all remain speculative. Some scholars believe it to be a form of ritual language used in Minoan religious ceremonies to record prayers or hymns. Others imagine it as an ancient musical score, with each symbol representing a sound, creating a primitive system of notation. Another theory suggests the disc was actually a kind of intellectual game, similar to a board or logic puzzle used for entertainment or mental training. A more symbolic approach views it as a cosmological text describing the journey from life to death and reflecting beliefs about the cycle of existence and the afterlife. However, despite the variety of interpretations, the core issue remains. No conclusive evidence supports any of these theories. With no comparative texts and no additional context, every reading reaches a dead end. This ambiguity has turned the Phaistos Disc into an intellectual labyrinth where each theory opens new mysterious pathways instead of leading to a final answer. One of the most striking aspects of the Phaistos Disc is its unique manufacturing technique. Instead of carving each symbol by hand onto the clay surface, like most artifacts of the time, the craftsman used small stamps to press into the soft clay before firing. This method created uniform, sharp impressions, suggesting a systematic production process rather than something random. Researchers believe this may represent the earliest evidence of a form of prehistoric printing technology dating back more than 700 years. This invention shows that the Minoans were not only creative with language and symbols, but also possessed an advanced mindset about replicating and transmitting information, an intellectual leap that laid the foundation for the later reproduction of knowledge. Although most archaeologists believe the Phaistos Disc is a genuine artifact of the Minoan civilization, a small group of scholars have raised doubts about its authenticity. They argue that an object too unique and without any known duplicates is often open to suspicion, especially since the content of the disc remains undeciphered. However, scientific analyses of the clay composition, firing traces, and craftsmanship style all show consistency with Minoan techniques, making the possibility of forgery almost impossible. Beyond all debates, the Phaistos Disc remains a powerful symbol of the mysteries of the past. It reminds us that no matter how advanced modern science becomes, there are still silent languages waiting to be deciphered. The disc is also a testament to the boundless imagination and creativity of ancient people who could design a unique, complex system of signs containing multiple layers of meaning. More than a century has passed since its discovery, yet the Phaistos Disc remains one of the world's most famous undeciphered texts. It raises questions about language, technology, religion, and the creativity of the Minoan civilization. Was it a sacred ritual, a message for posterity, or merely a mental game of the ancients? No one can say for certain. What is clear is the Phaistos Disc has been, is, and will continue to be an endless source of inspiration for researchers and a symbol of the greatness as well as the mystery of the ancient civilization of Crete. It is the embodiment of an undeciphered past, a symbol of secrets still awaiting humanity's discovery. Far out in the Pacific Ocean lies Easter Island, a land forever linked with its colossal Moai statues. But hidden in the shadow of those stone giants is a mystery even more perplexing. Scattered across the island, carved into weathered wooden tablets, are hundreds of strange symbols, human shapes, animals, plants, and abstract forms. This is Rongorongo, a script unlike any other on Earth. Some believe it is the lost voice of the Rapa Nui people, a record of their gods, their kings, or their downfall. Others fear its meaning has been erased forever. And yet one truth remains undeniable. Despite centuries of study, no one on this planet has ever managed to read a single sentence of Rongorongo. What do you think these mysterious symbols were meant to record? Sacred rituals, ancestral stories, or perhaps a history we will never recover? Share your thoughts in the comments below. What makes Rongorongo truly remarkable is its completely distinct emergence within the cultural context of Polynesia. Across the many islands of the region, no evidence of writing has ever been found. All knowledge was passed down orally through generations. Yet on Rapa Nui, small wooden tablets were discovered carefully carved with hundreds of symbols. Researchers have identified more than 600 different signs, human figures, birds, sea creatures, plants, flowers, and many abstract motifs that defy easy explanation. The richness and systematic nature of these signs have led many scholars to propose that the Rapa Nui people may have invented a completely independent writing system, an extremely rare phenomenon in human history, only seen in a handful of great civilizations such as Mesopotamia, Egypt, or the Maya. If this hypothesis is correct, Rongorongo is not merely the heritage of a tiny island in the middle of the ocean, but a powerful testament to human creativity that even in absolute isolation, the human mind still found ways to record, preserve memory, and safeguard history for future generations. One of the factors that makes Rongorongo even more mysterious is its unusual arrangement of symbols. Unlike most writing systems that follow a fixed horizontal direction, the Rapa Nui used a method called reverse boustrophedon. Specifically, the first line is carved from left to right, but the next line is flipped upside down and read in the opposite direction, and so on in alternating order. This means the reader must rotate the entire tablet after each line, as if the script and the reader were engaged together in a strange ritual of rotation. This carving style not only reflects a unique sense of aesthetics and thought, but also poses a tremendous challenge for modern researchers. For in truth, No other writing system in the world operates under this exact principle, making it nearly impossible to find comparisons or points of reference. What makes Rongorongo one of the world's most famous archaeological enigmas is the fact that to this very day, no one has ever been able to decipher it. Despite more than a century and a half of research, all efforts have produced nothing more than unverified hypotheses. As early as the 19th century, when European missionaries and scholars first encountered the wooden tablets covered in strange symbols, they were immediately fascinated by their peculiarity. Some believed Rongorongo to be a true writing system, recording the ancient Rapa Nui language, while others thought it was purely symbolic, used for religious rituals rather than as an actual script. From there, countless studies emerged, ranging from comparisons with Egyptian hieroglyphs and Mayan glyphs to modern computational linguistic analyses. Yet after all these attempts, no one has uncovered the key to reading even a single short passage. The greatest obstacle lies in the complete absence of bilingual texts for comparison. The successful decipherment of Egyptian hieroglyphs was possible only because of the Rosetta Stone, which contained the same text written in 3 different scripts, including ancient Greek. But with Rongorongo, humanity has no such Rosetta Stone. No translations exist, no parallel texts, no points of reference. Even worse, the native Rapa Nui people had long since lost the ability to read it. Historical upheavals such as tribal wars, famine, population decline, and the heavy influence of European culture meant that the knowledge of reading Rongorongo was never passed on. The symbols thus became a truly dead language, without speakers and without understanding. Today, only about 20 Rongorongo tablets survive, scattered across major museums from Santiago and Paris to London. This scarcity makes decipherment even harder, as the data is too limited to establish grammar or linguistic structure. Some statistical studies suggest patterns of repetition in the arrangement of signs, hinting that it may indeed have been a genuine writing system rather than mere decoration. But such evidence remains far too little to spark a breakthrough. Despite the impossibility of decipherment, scholars have speculated about its meaning. Some argue it is a chronicle recording the Rapa Nui people's history from ancestral origins to intertribal wars. Others suggest it had religious or ceremonial purposes, perhaps tied to worship or the rituals of raising moai statues. Still others propose that Rongorongo is not writing at all, but a mnemonic symbol system, like songs in pictures, used by priests or elders. But these remain hypotheses only. None has been proven, and each new investigation deepens the mystery. One key reason for the difficulty lies in the devastating loss of materials. When Europeans arrived on Rapa Nui in the 18th and 19th centuries, many Rongorongo tablets were burned as firewood or destroyed in social upheavals. By then, the locals no longer used or understood the script, so the knowledge of reading it could not be passed down. Only a few tablets were preserved and eventually transported to museums. This destruction has led many to say we stand before a locked secret, a vault of knowledge from an ancient culture whose key has been lost forever. Rongorongo is significant, not just for Rapa Nui's history, but for the history of human civilization. If it is indeed a true script, it would be one of the very few cases of independently invented writing in the world, alongside cuneiform in Mesopotamia, Egyptian hieroglyphs, and Mayan glyphs. This would mean that the Rapa Nui, in their absolute isolation in the middle of the Pacific, independently created a tool for recording knowledge without outside influence. Such an achievement would be astonishing, and it makes it all the more tragic that today humanity faces a heritage we cannot read. Rongorongo, with its hundreds of mysterious symbols carved into weathered wooden tablets, is one of the world's greatest archaeological enigmas. It is at once a monument to human creativity and a bitter reminder that some parts of history may remain forever hidden in the shadows of time. To this day, we can only gaze at Rongorongo and wonder, what stories do these inscriptions want to tell us? Are they about gods, ancestors, the Moai statues, or a once glorious civilization now gone? The answer, perhaps, will remain silent within the ancient wood, awaiting some miracle of science in the future. Imagine this: a ship gliding silently across the vast Atlantic, its sails torn by the wind, its cargo safe in the hold, the captain's cabin neatly arranged, yet not a single human soul on board. No cries for help, no signs of struggle, no trace of where the crew had gone. On December 4th, 1872, the American merchant vessel Mary Celeste was discovered in this eerie state, drifting aimlessly as if abandoned by time itself. Everything was intact: food, water, cargo, even personal belongings, except for the most important thing, the people. This chilling emptiness would forever mark Mary Celeste as the most legendary ghost ship in history, a riddle that the ocean still refuses to give up. If you were an explorer who happened to discover the Mary Celeste adrift at sea, what do you think truly caused the entire crew to vanish without a trace? Share your thoughts in the comments below. The ship Mary Celeste had a rather complicated history before embarking on its fateful voyage in 1872. Launched in Canada in 1861 under its original name Amazon, the vessel went through several owners and a number of mishaps, from collisions to changes in registration, before eventually falling into the hands of American investors and being renamed Mary Celeste. By late 1872, Captain Benjamin Briggs, a man highly regarded for his caution, extensive experience, and strict discipline, was entrusted with transporting more than 700 barrels of industrial alcohol from New York to Genoa, Italy. It was an important commercial mission, and Briggs chose to bring along his wife Sarah and their young daughter Sophia, in addition to 7 carefully selected crew members, all strong and seasoned sailors. On November 7, 1872, the Mary Celeste departed New York Harbor under favorable weather conditions. The ship was fully provisioned with food and fresh water for at least 6 months, and its valuable cargo was securely fastened in the hold. Everything pointed to a smooth voyage, with no sign of the looming tragedy. Yet only a few weeks later, when the Mary Celeste was discovered adrift in the Atlantic Ocean, the vessel was found completely deserted, marking the beginning of one of the most haunting mysteries in maritime history, a story that still sends shivers down the spine of the world today. On December 4th, 1872, the brigantine DEI Gratia, commanded by Captain David Morehouse, spotted the Mary Celeste drifting about 600 miles off the Azores. The sight stunned the crew of the DEI Gratia. The sails were tattered, the compass broken, and about a meter of water had seeped into the hold, but the vessel was still seaworthy and perfectly capable of continuing its journey. The strangest detail of all, not a single person was on deck. When they boarded her, they found provisions and drinking water untouched. The crew's personal belongings were neatly arranged clothes, folded in drawers, and beds made with blankets still in place. Even a meal seemed to have been recently prepared. There were no signs of struggle, no bloodstains, and no evidence of violence. The cargo of alcohol was virtually untouched, though one lifeboat was missing. Captain Briggs's logbook revealed that the last entry was made on November 25th, just days before the discovery. After that, complete silence, and it was this detail that instilled such dread a seaworthy ship with everything intact, yet the entire crew gone, as if they had evaporated from the face of the earth. The most haunting aspect of the entire Mary Celeste story lies in the absolute absence of human life. The ship remained intact, the cargo still in place, the crew's personal belongings neatly arranged, and provisions and fresh water sufficient for months. Yet everyone who had once set foot on board had vanished without a trace. If it had been a storm, there would have been wreckage. If pirates, there would have been evidence of plunder. If a mutiny, there would surely be signs of violence. Instead, the Mary Celeste revealed a chilling paradox. Everything remained in order, except for the people. The image of a solitary vessel drifting across the open sea, sails, torn rudder, still functional cargo, untouched, but with no footsteps and no voices to answer, evokes humanity's most primal fear: disappearance without a trace. An empty silence that sent shivers through the entire maritime world. Since the discovery of the Mary Celeste, countless theories have been put forward to explain the mysterious disappearance of her crew. One of the most popular theories concerns the very cargo on board, more than 700 barrels of highly volatile industrial alcohol. Some suggest that a small explosion or sudden flare-up of fumes may have occurred in the hold, prompting Captain Briggs, fearing a catastrophic blast, to order an emergency evacuation onto the lifeboat. However, if the boat was swept away by strong currents or met with an accident, the crew would never have returned, leaving the ship eerily deserted. Another theory points to the raw power of nature. Massive rogue waves, waterspouts, or sudden ocean currents could have swept the lifeboat and crew away in an instant. Others have speculated about human causes, mutiny, internal conflict, or even murder, followed by abandonment of the ship. Yet, when investigators boarded the Mary Celeste, they found no signs of violence, theft, or struggle, making such explanations less convincing. And finally, there are the supernatural accounts. Some claim that the Mary Celeste fell victim to sea monsters, alien abduction, or even a mythical Bermuda Triangle. Though lacking evidence, these tales are precisely what transformed the Mary Celeste from an ordinary maritime incident into one of the most haunting legends of the sea. The Mary Celeste was taken to Gibraltar for investigation. Despite numerous interrogations and inquiries, no definitive explanation was ever reached. The ship continued in service for years afterward, but never shed its cursed reputation as a ghost ship. Over the next century, the Mary Celeste inspired countless books, newspaper reports, and films. It became more than a maritime case. It became a cultural icon, a reminder of humanity's helplessness before the vast and unpredictable sea, and a symbol of the invisible fears that lurk beyond the horizon. Today, whenever people speak of ghost ships, the name Mary Celeste is always the first to be mentioned. Of all the mysteries that drift across the oceans, none is as tangible, chilling, or baffling as this one. The Mary Celeste remains a haunting reminder of life's fragility at sea. It shows that the ocean is not only vast and dangerous, but also filled with mysteries beyond human comprehension. To this day, no one knows for certain what happened during that fateful voyage. But one undeniable fact endures: the Mary Celeste was found completely deserted, with not a single soul on board, and it is this emptiness that has immortalized it as the most enduring legend in maritime history. Imagine sailing across the vast blue waters of Australia's Great Barrier Reef and suddenly spotting a sleek modern yacht drifting with no one at the helm. That was Kaz II in April 2007, a vessel that looked perfectly alive yet eerily abandoned. Its engine still hummed, The GPS glowed with coordinates, the radio whispered static, a laptop sat open on the table, and even lunch was left unfinished on plates. Everything spoke of normal life. Except for one chilling detail, the crew of 3 had completely vanished. No cries for help, no signs of struggle, just a ghost ship carrying silence across the waves. If you stumbled upon a yacht like the Kaz II engine running lunch still on the table, but not a single person on board, what would you think happened to the crew? Share your thoughts and theories in the comments below. This was not just a thrilling story in modern maritime history, but a mystery without a satisfactory explanation, immediately reminding many of the famous Mary Celeste case in 1872 in the Atlantic Ocean. However, the crucial difference is that Kaz II occurred in the 21st century in the context of satellite navigation, radio communication, and advanced maritime safety systems. Yet all of this still could not answer the haunting question, where did the 3 men go? The 3 sailors aboard Kaz II were Derek Batten, 56, along with brothers Peter Tunstead, 69, and James Tunstead, 63. They set sail from Airlie Beach, Queensland, heading toward Townsville, on what seemed to be a simple journey of friendship and enjoyment of the sea. None of them were professional mariners who had crossed vast oceans, but all 3 had years of experience sailing along Australia's coastal waters, confident enough to handle Kaz II safely. For them, this trip was a blend of passion, relaxation, and pride in mastering a modern yacht. Yet within only a few days, that joy turned into a baffling tragedy. When the vessel was eventually found, it remained intact from helm to cabin, everything in its place, with no trace of chaos or accident. Only one chilling truth left everyone in shock. The men had vanished completely, leaving Kaz II drifting silently as though forgotten in the endless sea. What the Coast Guard found on board resembled a house whose occupants had just stepped away for a moment. The engine was still humming, the electronics still powered. On the table, a meal was left unfinished, forks and knives resting on plates. Windows were open, letting the sea breeze drift inside. A camera preserved the last recorded footage, showing the 3 men standing on deck, chatting casually, with no sign of tension or danger. And then, everything stopped there. After that moment, no one ever saw them again. What made Kaz II a true enigma was the complete absence of any signs of violence or serious accident. A torn sail was the only hint that the vessel might have encountered strong wind or a technical issue, but this was not enough to explain why 3 men disappeared simultaneously. Life jackets were still in place, the life raft had not been deployed, the radio sent no distress call, and the logbook recorded nothing unusual. In the long history of maritime mysteries, few cases show all safety equipment left untouched like this one. Right after Kaz II was discovered, many theories were put forward to explain the mysterious disappearance of the 3 sailors. The most common theory suggested that while adjusting the sail or anchor, one man accidentally slipped and fell overboard. Instinctively, the other 2 rushed to rescue him, and in that chaotic moment, all 3 were swept away by the sea, leaving the yacht to drift on its own. This has been considered the most reasonable scenario, consistent with the remaining evidence on board, such as the torn sail and the placement of certain objects. Yet the theory still leaves many puzzling gaps. Why did no one manage to grab a life jacket when they were still neatly in place? Why was no distress call sent through the radio, even though the equipment was functioning? And most importantly, how could such a seemingly minor mishap result in the simultaneous disappearance of all 3 men, leaving no trace of resistance or survival efforts as if the ocean had swallowed them whole in an instant. In the early days of the investigation, some speculated that Kaz II might have fallen victim to pirates, since that seemed like the most straightforward explanation for an abandoned vessel. However, this theory was quickly dismissed. All valuables on board, from cash and electronic equipment to personal belongings, remained untouched, with no signs of rummaging or theft. Moreover, the waters off Queensland, where Kaz II was discovered, are not known as a hotspot for piracy or maritime crime. The intact presence of everything on the yacht strongly indicated that the crew were not victims of an outside attack, but had vanished due to some other mysterious cause. The strangest part was the ship's absolute silence. At sea, when an emergency occurs, the natural reaction of any crew is to send out distress signals. Yet on Kaz II, no call for help was ever made. It seemed everything happened too fast, too unexpectedly, leaving the men no time to respond. This chilling impression only deepened the mystery. 3 men vanished in an instant, leaving the vessel functioning normally, as if the ship itself did not realize its masters had left it. The press at the time dubbed it the modern Mary Celeste. Indeed, the similarities were striking: a ship in perfect condition, belongings undisturbed, no blood, no signs of violence, only the people were missing. But unlike the 19th century Mary Celeste, Kaz II existed in the age of advanced technology where data could be tracked and preserved. Yet even with this, no answers emerged. The most haunting element of the Kaz II case was the absolute absence of people. Across the vast ocean, physical traces remained, but life itself had evaporated. No bodies were ever recovered, even after extensive search operations. Families, friends, and the maritime community struggled to accept that 3 sailors had simply disappeared into nothingness. For them, this was worse than death, for at least death leaves behind evidence. Kaz II became a stark reminder of human fragility before the sea. No matter how advanced technology becomes, people can still be swallowed by the ocean in an instant. And it was precisely this silence, the ship continuing to function without human hands, that turned it into an unsettling symbol of modern maritime mysteries. To this day, more than a decade later, the mystery of Kaz II remains unresolved. The theories are still only speculation, with no conclusive proof. The only certainty is a bizarre, final moment. 3 men chatting casually on deck, then suddenly gone. Their ship continued its soulless journey, a mute witness to a secret never revealed. Kaz II reminds us that even in the 21st century, with satellites orbiting the globe and instant communication technology, the ocean still keeps some secrets for itself. And perhaps the disappearance of the 3 sailors in 2007 will forever remain a question mark hanging over maritime history. Imagine a ship so massive it towered over most vessels of its time, 165 meters long, carrying more than 11,000 tons of cargo and crewed by over 300 men. This was USS Cyclops, the pride of the US Navy's logistics fleet during World War I. Yet in March 1918, as it sailed through the waters now infamous as the Bermuda Triangle, the Cyclops and everyone on board simply vanished. No distress call, no wreckage, no bodies, just silence. To this day, the disappearance of the USS Cyclops remains one of the greatest maritime mysteries ever recorded, an unsolved riddle that has haunted historians, sailors, and mystery hunters for more than a century. Do you believe the USS Cyclops was lost to a storm sabotage or something far more mysterious within the Bermuda Triangle drop? Your thoughts in the comments below. USS Cyclops was launched in 1910 as the lead ship of the Navy's massive Collier class. Measuring more than 165 meters long, over 20 meters wide and capable of carrying up to 11,000 tons of coal or manganese ore, it was considered a source of pride in the US logistics fleet. Unlike battleships with their heavy guns or destroyers with their speed, Cyclops played a quieter but essential role, supplying fuel to other warships, becoming the lifeblood that sustained the fleet's power during World War I. The Cyclops carried more than 300 crew members, including naval officers and civilian sailors. With its colossal size, it was not just an engineering achievement, but a floating fortress, symbolizing America's rapidly expanding logistical strength in the early 20th century. The final voyage of the USS Cyclops in March 1918 is regarded as one of the most mysterious tragedies in the history of the US Navy. At that time, the massive vessel was tasked with transporting an enormous load of manganese ore, an essential material for steel production during wartime, from Brazil back to the United States. It was meant to be a routine journey, but it took place under extraordinary circumstances. World War I was at its peak. The Atlantic Ocean was not only a vital trade route, but also a hidden battlefield where German U-boats lurked, stalking every American merchant and naval ship. Beyond the dangers of enemy attack, ships also faced unpredictable weather and the technical limitations of their own design. On February 16, 1918, the Cyclops departed Rio de Janeiro fully loaded. Burdened with this massive cargo, the ship was heavier and slower than usual. Along the way, it made a few short stops to take on supplies, and on March 3rd, the Cyclops docked at Barbados. This would be the last time the ship was ever seen or officially recorded. After leaving Barbados, the ship set course directly for Baltimore, Maryland, but then it completely vanished. No distress signal was ever sent, and not a single clue, no oil slick, no wreckage, no drifting bodies was ever discovered. For a vessel 165 meters long, with more than 300 crew members, such a total disappearance stunned the public and seemed beyond belief. What makes the case even more perplexing is that weather reports recorded no major storms along the ship's expected route. The ship's logs left no hint of technical failure or panic among the crew. The Cyclops appeared to have simply disappeared from the maritime map in an instant. This strange vanishing has since tied the ship's story to the legend of the Bermuda Triangle, the infamous stretch of ocean said to have swallowed countless ships and planes. In the months following the disappearance, the US Navy mounted a large-scale search along Cyclops's estimated route, but no wreckage of any kind was found. A massive ship laden with heavy cargo and more than 300 lives all vanished as if they had never existed. In its final official report, the US Navy admitted it could not determine a cause. It could only state the ship disappeared without a trace. No one knows what happened. This remains the largest non-combat loss of life in US Navy history, and to this day, it has no definitive explanation. For more than a century, the strange disappearance of the USS Cyclops has driven researchers, journalists, and enthusiasts of the unexplained to propose countless theories in an effort to understand what happened in the middle of the Atlantic Ocean. One of the most common ideas is that the ship was struck by a violent storm during its journey from Barbados to Baltimore. With its enormous size, heavy cargo, and structural instability, Cyclops may have been overwhelmed by massive waves and sunk so quickly that there was no time to send a distress call. However, weather records from that period do not confirm the presence of any major storm, leaving this explanation without solid evidence. Some experts instead point to technical issues. The Cyclops was rumored to have shown signs of hull warping and structural weakness. When carrying a full load of manganese ore, the immense weight could have caused the ship to break apart in mid-ocean, sinking instantly and giving the crew no chance to respond. Others believe the cargo itself might have been the culprit. Under certain conditions, manganese ore can trigger strong chemical reactions, even explosions. A blast in the cargo hold could have destroyed the vessel in an instant, explaining why no distress signal was ever received. Beyond this, the broader context of World War I cannot be ignored. In 1918, the seas were rife with the dangers of German U-boats, leading to speculation that Cyclops was either attacked or sabotaged. Yet no evidence has ever surfaced, and Germany never claimed responsibility. Finally, the theory that has captivated the public most of all is tied to the legend of the Bermuda Triangle. Many believe that this stretch of ocean hides strange geomagnetic phenomena, mysterious whirlpools, or even supernatural forces beyond the reach of science. For many, it is this so-called curse that swallowed the USS Cyclops and 309 souls, erasing them forever without a trace. What makes Cyclops even more legendary is that its two sister ships, USS Proteus and USS Nereus, also vanished in similar circumstances in the Atlantic during the 1940s. This fueled the belief that a curse surrounded the Collier-class vessels. In popular culture, Cyclops is frequently mentioned in books, documentaries, and investigations into the Bermuda Triangle. It has become one of the most famous examples of the mystery of that region, where science and imagination have yet to provide a definitive answer. More than a century has passed since the disappearance of USS Cyclops. Modern seafloor mapping technology has solved many maritime mysteries, but Cyclops's wreck has never been located. Its final voyage in 1918 was not just a historical tragedy, but also a stark reminder of the vast unknowns that still lurk within our oceans. Cyclops departed Barbados on what seemed like an ordinary day. Yet within just a few short days, it and 309 souls vanished from the world, leaving questions that remain unanswered. Perhaps that is why the mystery of USS Cyclops endures as an immortal legend in maritime history, a giant ghost ship of the Bermuda Triangle. In 1845, under the command of Sir John Franklin, the ships HMS Erebus and HMS Terror set out on one of the greatest missions of the Age of Exploration to conquer the Northwest Passage, the frozen sea route connecting the Atlantic and Pacific Oceans. The British Empire at that time was eager to find a new route to expand trade, and Franklin was entrusted with a formidable expedition of 129 men equipped with the most advanced technology of the 19th century. Both ships carried steam engines, heating systems, reinforced hulls to withstand the ice, and enough canned provisions for 3 years. In theory, this expedition was nearly perfect, hailed as the Iron Army of science and imperial ambition. Yet the journey became one of the most tragic and mysterious maritime disasters in human history. Only a few years after departing, no messages were ever received. Both ships disappeared completely, leaving grieving families and a nation haunted by the question, what truly happened in the frozen Arctic? What do you think truly caused the mysterious deaths of the entire crews of HMS Erebus and HMS Terror? Lead poisoning from canned food disease, the brutal Arctic climate, or perhaps another mystery still unsolved? Share your thoughts in the comments below. According to the few surviving records, HMS Erebus and HMS Terror became trapped in thick ice near King William Island in 1846. At first, the crew remained resilient, relying on their stored provisions and modern technology to endure. But the brutal cold, the lack of sunlight, and prolonged psychological pressure soon pushed them into a spiral of hunger, illness, and despair. By June 1847, Sir John Franklin, the spiritual leader of the expedition, had died, leaving more than 120 men adrift in uncertainty. A brief note later found in a metal canister on the island stated that the ships had been abandoned, and the survivors were forced to march southward, clinging to the faint hope of finding safety. Tragically, those were also the last words the world would ever hear from them. From then on, the darkest chapter began. All 129 sailors vanished, with not a single soul surviving to return. Clues to their fate came only from later search parties, from Inuit testimony, and from skeletal remains scattered across the frozen landscape, silent witnesses to a tragedy that has never found its final answer. One of the greatest questions surrounding the tragedy of HMS Erebus and HMS Terror is the true cause of the crew's deaths. Scientists have spent decades studying and debating the issue, and the most striking evidence comes from what was once the pride of 19th century British technology: canned food. The tins were sealed with lead, a preservation method considered advanced at the time, but as the solder corroded, lead slowly seeped into the food, silently poisoning the sailors. Forensic analysis of their bones revealed abnormally high levels of lead, enough to cause neurological damage, digestive disorders, weakened immunity, and overall physical collapse. Yet lead poisoning was only part of the story. Scurvy caused by vitamin C deficiency ravaged their bodies as well: swollen bleeding gums, loose teeth, unhealed wounds, and a steadily deteriorating morale. Combined with the brutal Arctic cold, the lack of fresh food, and the endless darkness, their health deteriorated rapidly. Many succumbed only months after abandoning the ships, while the final survivors faced a merciless choice to keep staggering forward in hopelessness or surrender and lie forever in the eternal frozen wasteland. One of the most chilling and haunting pieces of evidence about the fate of the crew comes from the accounts of the Inuit, who reported finding human remains with unusual marks, suggesting that the English sailors were forced into cannibalism during their final days. Later excavations confirmed this detail. Many bones bore clear, sharp cuts made by metal blades, indicating that flesh had been deliberately removed. These were not the traces of an accident or wild animal activity, but proof that the sailors, driven to the brink, had to break every moral boundary just to cling to life. The image of Royal Navy men, once regarded as symbols of honor, discipline, and imperial power, reduced to desperate figures surviving on the bodies of their comrades, made this tragedy all the more painful. It reflects both the unforgiving cruelty of the Arctic and the helplessness of humans when pushed to the absolute limits of survival. What made the tragedy of HMS Erebus and HMS Terror even more haunting was their complete disappearance, lasting nearly 170 years without leaving any clear trace. During that time, countless search expeditions were launched and numerous theories proposed. Some believed the ships had been crushed by the ice. Others thought they had drifted further south, yet all remained mere speculation. That absolute silence turned the disaster into a collective obsession for the British. Newspapers, novels, poetry, and even folklore drew inspiration from the tale. It was not only a maritime catastrophe, but also a symbol both proud and bitter of imperial ambition against the unyielding power of nature. In 2014 and 2016, after nearly 2 centuries of searching, Canadian archaeologists finally discovered the wrecks of HMS Erebus and HMS Terror beneath the Arctic seabed. Astonishingly, both ships were preserved almost intact, thanks to the harsh cold and perpetual ice. Inside, many compartments still retained their original structure, along with countless artifacts such as personal belongings books, nautical instruments, and even the everyday items once used by the crew. These discoveries were not only a breakthrough in underwater archaeology, but also opened new hope of uncovering clues about the expedition's tragic final days. Yet even as the evidence becomes clearer, the central question remains unanswered: what truly killed all 129 sailors, leaving not a single one to return? Today, HMS Erebus and HMS Terror are not merely wrecks lying silent beneath the ice. They stand as symbols of courage and the fragility of humankind before nature. The mysterious deaths of their crew evoke both sorrow and fascination. They remind us that no matter how well-prepared or technologically advanced humans remain small against the vast power of nature. At the same time, this disaster remains a costly lesson for science navigation and human ambition. HMS Erebus and HMS Terror may have perished, but the story of their doomed 1845 voyage still echoes through time. It is not just the tale of two vanished ships, but a painful reminder that the greatest mysteries are not always what we have yet to discover, but the brutal truths we may never want to face. On the morning of January 31st, 1921, the treacherous waters of Cape Hatteras, ominously nicknamed the Graveyard of the Atlantic, revealed a chilling spectacle. A towering five-masted schooner, the Carroll A. Deering, loomed silently on the Diamond Shoals. Its sails were tattered by the wind, its hull scarred by the surf. Yet the most horrifying detail was not the ship's wreck itself, but the unnerving emptiness within. No voices, no footsteps, no trace of its crew. Only a colossal vessel standing mute like a ghost, frozen in time on the edge of the sea. If you were among the first to board the Carroll A. Deering that day, finding an enormous ship completely intact but eerily deserted, what would you think had happened to the crew? Share your theories in the comments below. I'd love to hear your thoughts. Launched in 1919, the Carroll A. Deering was among the most modern commercial sailing ships of its era, boasting 5 towering masts and a design optimized to carry massive loads of cargo. Its mission seemed straightforward: depart from Norfolk, Virginia, deliver coal to Rio de Janeiro, Brazil, and return to the United States. The outbound journey was recorded as largely successful, but on the way back, strange signs began to surface. Lighthouse keepers reported odd behavior among the crew, at times unruly or confused, and most intriguingly, a mysterious man was seen on deck in place of the actual captain. At first, these fragments appeared harmless, yet when the ship was later discovered completely abandoned, they became chilling clues, suggesting that what seemed to be a routine voyage had long carried within it the ominous shadow of an unsolved mystery. When authorities finally boarded the Carroll A. Deering after it had run aground on the Diamond Shoals, they were confronted with an unforgettable and chilling sight. The rudder was severely damaged, the steering wheel appeared deliberately destroyed, and the compass ship's log and all navigational instruments had vanished without a trace. Most frightening of all, every lifeboat was missing, suggesting the crew had abandoned ship in a state of emergency. Yet the mystery deepened throughout the vessel. There were no signs of struggle, no evidence of violence, not a single drop of blood or the chaos one might expect from a pirate attack. In the galleypots still held half-prepared meals, and dishes looked as if they had been left behind in sudden haste, giving the impression that the crew had disappeared in an instant. This unnerving contrast, a massive ship intact in every way, yet utterly devoid of human life, planted a lasting terror that has haunted maritime history for more than a century. The scene aboard the Carroll A. Deering immediately evoked memories of the famous Mary Celeste, 1872, a ship also found deserted in the middle of the Atlantic with no explanation as to why. However, the Deering incident unfolded in a completely different context, the early 20th century, when maritime navigation had already advanced significantly with improved navigation systems, more accurate compasses, and radio communication. More importantly, it took place during America's Prohibition era, when smuggling, piracy, and criminal gangs thrived on the seas. This combination of technological progress and turbulent social conditions made the mystery of the Carroll A. Deering even more perplexing, distinctive, and haunting compared to that of the Mary Celeste. Immediately after the Carroll A. Deering was discovered, a flood of theories emerged in an attempt to explain the crew's baffling fate. One of the most common ideas was a possible mutiny. The crew may have turned against the captain and fled the vessel using the lifeboats. Yet this theory quickly faced contradictions, for if they had left, why did no one survive? And why was there no trace of them on sea or land? Another angle suggested the ship might have been attacked by pirates or rum-running gangs during Prohibition, when these waters were rife with criminal activity. However, the lack of blood signs of violence or stolen cargo rendered this explanation unconvincing. More practical researchers argued the crew may have encountered a sudden storm or serious maritime accident, forcing them to abandon ship. But the most perplexing question remains, why did the entire crew vanish without a single body or even fragments of lifeboats washing ashore? It is this illogical void that has kept the Carroll A. Deering mystery alive for over a century, with no definitive answer in sight. What makes this case truly terrifying is that Carroll A. Deering was found adrift with not a single person on board. The ship remained intact, the cargo untouched, no signs of looting or serious damage. Yet over 10 men had vanished as though they never existed. This stark contrast, a giant schooner towering over the waves but completely empty, cemented the incident as one of the most famous maritime mysteries in American history. Journalists quickly dubbed Carroll A. Deering the Mary Celeste of the 20th century. American newspapers covered it extensively, with some even linking it to the Bermuda Triangle, notorious for unexplained disappearances of ships and planes. While Cape Hatteras is not within the official Bermuda Triangle, the proximity and the eerie circumstances led the public to suspect supernatural forces. The US government launched an official investigation but reached no clear conclusion. The final report merely stated that the crew disappeared under unknown circumstances. This only deepened the mystery. From there, theories spread: further technical failure, mutiny, piracy, and even alien abduction or supernatural phenomena. Today, more than a century has passed, yet the mystery of the Carroll A. Deering remains unsolved. Not a single crew member was ever found, no lifeboat was ever recovered, and no evidence has ever been sufficient to explain what truly happened. The wreck itself was later battered by storms and dismantled, leaving behind only a handful of black and white photographs and dry investigation reports. All of this has turned the Carroll A. Deering into an enduring symbol of mysterious disappearances at sea. What makes Carroll A. Deering unique is precisely the absence of human life, the factor that turned it into one of America's most terrifying ghost ships. Ships can sink, be plundered, or destroyed. That is common in maritime history. But a modern vessel grounded intact cargo and equipment still present, with only the crew missing. That is an enigma beyond explanation. Today, when people recall Carroll A. Deering, they picture a towering schooner, empty, cold, and drifting on the ocean with no one aboard. It has become a symbol of mystery, a reminder that even in the modern age, the sea still hides secrets beyond human control. Carroll A. Deering was not just a maritime accident, but a modern legend, where the detail of being found adrift without a crew transformed it into one of the most famous ghost ships in American history. On a frigid day in 1775, as whalers navigated the unforgiving seas off Greenland, they spotted a lone vessel drifting silently through the ice. It was the Octavius, a ship that would soon etch its name into legend. When they boarded, they expected noise, movement, the bustle of life at sea. Instead, they were met with an eerie stillness, a silence so complete it seemed as if the very flow of time had stopped. What lay within would become one of the most haunting ghost ship stories ever told. In your opinion, which is more terrifying? A ship with no crew at all, like the Mary Celeste, or a ship like Octavius, where everyone is dead, but their bodies remain perfectly preserved? Share your thoughts in the comments below. In 1761, Octavius departed from an English port with an audacious ambition to become one of the first ships to conquer the Northwest Passage, the legendary route through the Arctic that would connect the Atlantic and Pacific Oceans. It was the dream of many 18th century explorers, yet also a gamble with life itself, for the polar region at that time was little more than a blank space on the map. There were no detailed charts, no reliable climate records, only a shroud of mystery and peril. Towering ice floes could crush a vessel without warning. Freezing winds sliced through flesh, sudden blizzards struck without mercy, and death seemed to lurk at every horizon. Still, the burning desire to be pioneers drove the crew forward, and that same pride would ultimately deliver Octavius to its tragic fate, a grim reminder of the devastating price humans must pay when daring to challenge nature. When the whalers boarded Octavius in 1775, they encountered a scene so chilling it would haunt them for the rest of their lives. The entire crew was dead, yet not in chaos panic or the decay one might expect. Instead, it seemed as though they had simply paused their work and been frozen in time. Many bodies were found curled beneath blankets, their gaunt faces etched with the merciless marks of the cold. Others sat motionless, in chairs, heads resting on tables, their eyes closed as if in sleep, but a sleep from which they would never awaken. Most striking of all was the captain's cabin. There he sat upright at his desk, the ship's logbook open before him, a pen still clutched in his hand, as though death had struck in the very moment he was writing his final words. The relentless Arctic frost had preserved their forms for years, transforming the vessel into a colossal wooden coffin adrift upon the sea, carrying with it a company of frozen phantoms trapped in eternal silence. Unlike cases such as the Mary Celeste, where the crew vanished without a trace, Octavius horrified precisely because of the presence of frozen corpses. There was no disappearance, no abandonment, only a silent collective death preserved as mute evidence. Faces, still visible clothes, hardened by ice bodies locked in place, all gave the impression that time had stopped aboard this ship. What people saw were not just dead bodies, but the very final moments of life, moments frozen for years, a chilling sight beyond description. When the captain's logbook was examined, the last entry was found, dated 1762, just a year after Octavius had departed port. This chilling detail revealed a grim truth. The crew likely perished very early in their voyage, trapped when the ship was sealed within the Arctic ice. For the next 14 years, Octavius was no longer a vessel on a mission, but a drifting tomb of ice, wandering aimlessly across the sea. The bodies aboard did not decay or vanish. Instead, They lingered like silent phantoms, guarding the ship's frozen halls. For the whalers who stumbled upon it, stepping inside was like crossing into a cursed world where time itself had stopped and where the cold silence echoed endlessly in their minds. The deaths of the Octavius crew have fueled countless theories over the centuries. Some believe the ship was trapped in massive ice flows, leaving the crew powerless as the cold slowly drained their strength until life slipped away. Others suggest that after weeks of isolation, food and fresh water ran out and starvation struck them down, even before the cold delivered its final blow. Still, some argue it was a combination of many factors: hunger, freezing temperatures, illness, and despair that created this collective tragedy. Yet the most haunting detail is not the cause itself, but the way they all died mid-action, as though caught in their final living moments. That frozen image transformed Octavius into more than just a maritime disaster. It became a tableau of death, preserved in ice, a chilling testament to nature's merciless power. What makes the story of Octavius so haunting is the detail that the entire crew was dead, yet their bodies remained intact. In maritime history, there are few cases where the image of people has been preserved at the very moment of their final breath. Most ghost ship legends revolve around mysterious disappearances of crews like the Mary Celeste, or enigmas where no one survived to tell the tale. But Octavius was different. It did not merely pose the question. What happened? It forced people to confront a chilling tableau where the truth stood visible without explanation. Those frozen corpses draped the story in a spectral aura, transforming Octavius into a horrifying symbol etched forever in maritime memory. For centuries, the story of Octavius has sparked fierce debate among scholars and historians. No official records confirm the ship's existence, leading many to believe it was merely a maritime legend woven from the fears and imaginations of sailors long ago. Yet the enduring power of the tale does not rest on historical evidence, but on the strength of its imagery. A vessel imprisoned in ice, its crew long dead but perfectly preserved, drifting aimlessly like a chilling warning. Whether fact or fable, Octavius continues to instill in people a haunting awareness of human fragility against the merciless Arctic. It reminds us that in such a realm, one may not only vanish, but also remain forever entombed in a frozen death. Thus, Octavius entered history as both a warning and a haunting tale. It testifies to mankind's relentless urge to explore, but also reminds us there are places nature has not yet permitted us to reach. The image of the captain seated before his logbook, pen in hand, became an emblem of tragic destiny. Man may record his journey, yet sometimes never complete it. That logbook, like the ship itself, became the relic of a tragedy frozen in time. Today, when people recall Octavius, they do not only think of a ghost ship, they think of a mirror, reflecting mankind's primal fear of being trapped, abandoned, and frozen forever in a cold death. In collective memory, Octavius has become one of the most terrifying maritime symbols, embodying humanity's helplessness before the Arctic's brutal force. For that reason, its story endures not as a mere event, but as a haunting legend that will be told for all time. In maritime history, there have been many stories of ships abandoned and drifting across the oceans with no survivors on board. But few cases have left such haunting questions as the story of the Joyita in 1955 in the South Pacific. Nicknamed the Mary Celeste of the Pacific Joyita, not only shocked the maritime world, but also became a symbol of mysteries left unsolved. And the most chilling detail of all, not a single body was ever found. What do you think really happened to the 25 people aboard the Joyita? Were they victims of panic piracy or something far stranger? Share your thoughts in the comments below. On October 3, 1955, the vessel Joyita, about 21 meters long, once serving during World War II and later converted into a combined cargo and passenger ship, departed from Samoa, bound for the Tokelau Islands. The voyage was expected to last only about 48 hours, and on board were a total of 25 people, including crew and passengers. They carried various goods, medical supplies, and provisions intended to support isolated communities scattered across the ocean. It was supposed to be a routine journey, nothing unusual, and no one could have imagined it would turn into one of the greatest maritime mysteries in history. Yet Joyita never arrived. After weeks of complete silence, the vessel was finally discovered on November 10, 1955, more than a month after departure. By then, Joyita was drifting aimlessly across the South Pacific, eerily quiet like a ghost ship, with not a single person left on deck. All 25 souls had vanished, leaving behind a chilling void that remains unexplained to this day. When the search and rescue teams finally reached the Joyita, the sight before them sent chills down their spines. The deck was smeared with thick black oil stains, evidence that the engines had suffered serious trouble. Inside the cabins, many windows were shattered and wires hung in tangled clusters as if someone had hastily dismantled them. Most striking of all, the radio transmitter, the lifeline for communication across the ocean, had been removed in a puzzling manner, leaving Joyita completely cut off during its voyage. Yet strangely enough, the hull remained afloat and stable, thanks to its special anti-sinking design, meaning the vessel itself was never in imminent danger of being abandoned. What chilled investigators even more was that all personal belongings, documents, and most disturbingly, every single lifeboat were gone. The signs of a rushed evacuation were unmistakable, but no one knew what had happened afterward. And above all, the most haunting detail was this: not a single body was ever found. 25 people had vanished completely, as if swallowed whole by the sea, leaving behind not even the faintest trace for future generations to follow. What makes the Joyita incident one of the most haunting maritime mysteries is the detail that not a single body was ever found. In most sea tragedies, whether the ship sinks or is abandoned, rescue teams usually recover at least a few bodies or traces, such as life jackets, fragments of lifeboats, or even just personal items drifting in the water. But with Joyita, 25 people seem to have vanished completely into the vast ocean. No bodies, no bones, not even the slightest sign proving whether they were dead or alive. This absolute disappearance elevated the case into a chilling legend, giving rise to countless theories, from scientific explanations such as panic and abandonment to darker speculations involving piracy, smuggling, or even supernatural forces beyond human understanding. After Joyita was discovered, abandoned theories began to pour in, each attempting to explain how all 25 people could vanish completely without leaving a single trace. The first and most reasonable theory suggested that the crew had fallen into a state of panic. When the engines failed and water started leaking into the compartments, they may have believed the ship was about to sink and hurriedly abandoned Joyita in the lifeboats. However, this argument was quickly challenged, because if that were the case, search teams should have at least found some bodies, fragments of lifeboats, or drifting belongings. In reality, nothing was ever found, making this scenario far less convincing. A second theory pointed to the possibility of pirates or smugglers attacking the vessel. They might have killed or kidnapped everyone on board. Yet the puzzling question remained: why didn't the attackers sink Joyita to erase the evidence? And why were there no signs of slaughter, no blood, no clear destruction? Another theory suggested that internal conflict between the captain and crew escalated into violence with disastrous consequences. But even this could not explain the central mystery: why was not a single body ever found? In the end, when logical explanations proved insufficient, many turned to supernatural theories. Some believed Joyita may have strayed into a kind of Pacific Triangle, or that an invisible force had taken the people away. Though lacking scientific basis, such theories held strong appeal as they stirred our deepest fear that sometimes humans can disappear completely before a power beyond our understanding. It is precisely the variety yet incompleteness of these theories that has allowed the story of Joyita to live on as one of the sea's most enduring unsolved mysteries. Compared to the case of the Mary Celeste in 1872, many often refer to Joyita as the Mary Celeste of the Pacific. However, the truth is far more chilling. On the Mary Celeste, there were still indirect clues suggesting the crew had abandoned ship tools, records, and belongings left behind. But on Joyita, what haunts people most is the absolute disappearance of 25 individuals. No traces, no clues, not a single body. This difference is what makes Joyita an even darker and more terrifying tale, a mystery far beyond anything the Mary Celeste ever suggested. What makes the Joyita incident so chilling and difficult to explain is the complete absence of bodies. In the vastness of the ocean, it is not unusual for one or two individuals to be lost, but for an entire group of 25 people to vanish at once without leaving the slightest trace is almost impossible to believe. No clues, no bones, no physical evidence to help reconstruct the truth. This absolute disappearance not only sparks curiosity, but also plants a deep fear that the sea can swallow an entire group of people without offering any explanation at all. Today, the story of Joyita is still retold in books, documentaries, and mystery archives. The ship became a symbol, not because of its design or its wartime service, but because of the strange fate of her crew. No bodies, no answers, only a chilling silence left behind. 1955 is long past, witnesses have passed away, and official records are insufficient to reconstruct the truth. For that reason, Joyita will forever remain on the list of the world's most famous ghost ships, where the silence of the ocean is the only answer left behind.